Purpose of our meeting, oh, I'm sorry, we're going to do roll call first. Can I ask the clerk to please call the roll?
Councilmember Craven?
Here.
Councilmember Kilby? Councilmember Tremblay? Vice Mayor Santangelo?
Here.
And Mayor Milche.
Present. Always getting ahead of myself. The purpose of our meeting at 4:30 today is to go into closed session. I'm going to ask the city attorney to please read the purposes for our going into closed session.
Yes, this would be a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. Number of potential cases is 2.
Thank you. And do we have any public comment, any submitted public comment? And I don't see anyone here in the audience. So at this time, we're going to recess into closed session, and we will be back at 5 o'clock.
My microphone here. The microphone working? Okay, good. All right, so we'll call the Camarillo Sanitary District meeting to order at 5 o'clock and let the record reflect that all the directors are present. Are there any changes?
How about the library board?
Agenda? What's that?
How about the library board?
What did I say? I've got,
Sanitary district.
excuse me, I'm on the wrong agenda. Serves me right for looking at my agenda. Okay, let's try this again here. We'll call the Camarillo Library Board of Trustees meeting to order, please, and we'll let the record reflect that all the directors are present. So we'll do a flag salute now. Mrs. Craven, would you lead us in the flag salute?
Certainly,
What's your
please
name?
rise. Place your hand over your heart and join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, everybody okay with the agenda as present? And if so, we'll get down to public comments. Any public comments for the library? Do not see anybody coming forward. Let's get down to consent calendar.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. That passes unanimously. Okay, so I don't believe there's any oral communication. Anybody have anything they'd like to say tonight? And not seeing anybody, I will adjourn the meeting.
Call the meeting of the Camarillo Sanitary District Board to order and ask the record to reflect that all board members are present. Is there any changes to this agenda? Public comments. Would anybody like to speak to the Camarillo Sanitary Board on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing no one come forward, we have no cards. We'll move on to the consent calendar.
I'll move the approval.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second, please vote.
There we go.
Motion carries unanimously. Any oral communications, information that we can present to other board members? No? Okay, we're moving right along. At this point, we're going to recess, and we will call to order again when the city council discusses certain items, E and F.
You recessed?
So we're in recess.
I will reconvene the Camarillo City Council meeting and let the record reflect that all council members are present. We have on our agenda the flag salute. No disrespect to the flag, but we did the flag salute under the library, so I'm going to skip that item. Approval of the agenda or any amendments?
I would like to pull item I.
Item I, library cafe.
Yes.
All right. Do you anticipate having an extensive discussion about it?
I have some things I'd like to have the council consider.
Because I'm apt to put it right after, I'm going to take it right after,
Wherever you want to put it.
I'm going to put it right after consent calendar. So we'll take it immediately after.
Okay.
Any other amendments to the agenda? Seeing none. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Please vote. That passes unanimously with the exception of item I, in which case we will take up right now. Item I, library cafe operator would be, do you want a staff?
I don't think we need a staff report. I just wanted to pull this. We have had a lot of problems trying to find and keep an operator there. In the, I think it's been 15 years, but for 2 years it was closed because of COVID. So let's call it the 13 years. We've had 4 operators, but there have been times when there wasn't an operator because somebody left. Nobody's been able to make any money there, and we don't operate it, so it's not supposed to be a nonprofit type thing. People are in business so they can earn some money, or at least break even. It seems to me, as I go in and out of the library, that the outdoor space with the tables is tremendously popular with young people who have laptops and they work on their laptops and they socialize. It's popular with young mothers who have been in the library but brought picnic lunches, or they're going to go into the library, and they sit out there with their picnic lunches and they socialize. And that happens whether we have an operator or not. And so I'm just wondering if the council, we can't do it tonight, but since we're looking at going out to bid for a new operator, I'm just wondering if it would be advantageous for the council to consider whether we need that space for something else, whether the Friends of the Library need more space, or whether we want to continue having a cafe there.
I have a question about the cafe, and it's going to be directed to staff, whoever can answer it. I see John get up.
And it says in the staff report that it was to go to a caterer who would operate it. And what we discovered, let me just say, is that caterers don't operate little itty-bitty cafes. Caterers do a lot of big food preparation, and that's not where they can do it. And it didn't work out. So after the first caterer, we just went to cafe operators.
Hey, John, does that cafe, do they have a hood system? Yeah. And I will say that that's a big issue. If you're in the food service business, not having a hood system, it really limits your ability of what you can do in there and what you can offer. Oh, that was my only question. I didn't know. Thank you.
So anyway, I didn't know if you wanted to bring it back for discussion or just authorize them to go for bids.
I'll make it. Could
Do
we,
you want to opine on that, Kevin?
can we comment on this, or?
Yeah, we're opening it up to discussion.
Necessarily on the agenda, but it kind of is. Can we make a couple comments? Okay. I think it's important to know a little bit of the history, and Charlotte probably knows it more than I do, but I'll take a stab at it. When we first built the library, it was when Barnes & Noble was in business, and they had, you could get a cup of coffee there, and we thought it was really a cool idea. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we could have, a opportunity for folks to go and get a cup of coffee before they go into the library. Of course, we don't allow that in the library, but as you got out. So I think the concept was really good. I think what really hurt the situation is a lot of things, not the least of which when Starbucks opened up pretty much close to right where that is too. I think that had an effect too. So I think, maybe we need to see if there's any interest, but I think Mrs. Craven is right. Maybe we need to have a little chat with this and see if there's not another use that would be more advantageous to what we're doing here. Because clearly with, this many operators, and we've really put our best foot forward on this. We really, really tried, and it just so far has not worked. So those are my thoughts.
I will add, from my perspective, not having a hood is a big disadvantage and limiting. I feel like now more than ever it could potentially succeed. Something could succeed. I mean, not only do they have the best lease in more than Camarillo, this is the best lease in Ventura County. 3% of gross sales is what you pay.
We had to do that to get bidders.
Oh, yeah, I know, I understand why it is what it is. But I feel like if I were to do it, then I would have breakfast options you have high school kids, you have a very captive audience over there, where you can offer breakfast in the morning, smoothies when school gets out in the afternoon. You can run it as a ghost kitchen, although again, without a hood system, you're rather limited. Ghost kitchens are very popular. There's a lot of restaurants in Camarillo right now, they're running ghost kitchens, stuff DoorDash and the like. But if you look at where the kids go, the high school kids from that, they actually work their way down to Blenders, and there's a line out the door. Blenders, they love smoothies in the afternoon, they like breakfast in the morning. I can't help but to feel that some savvy operator could make it work. So I'm on the fence about it. I hear the argument. Mr. Tremblay?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me that we ought to defer, perhaps taking action on the item. We've got the strategic plan that we're in the middle of doing as well. And certainly consistent with the preparation of that strategic plan, there may come to light a better use for that space. I don't think it hurts us to wait, and so my thought is, let's defer it for 60 days pending preparation and completion of the strategic plan and see if there's any other use. I don't think it hurts us in any way to wait.
Ms. Santangelo?
I agree with that. My concern is that I think there's a desire for there to be a place to get a cup of coffee at the library. And I've heard a number of people when the library was closed, when the library had reopened, asking when the cafe was going to open. So I'm totally open to, talking about other options, including other ways to provide some sort of food service.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Susan, you make a good point. It's just, at this point, if we're going to talk about other options, I just don't want to go through a proposal process and then on the back end say, well, we've decided not to have that use there, which is why I'm thinking maybe we ought to defer. But I certainly understand, agree with your point.
So we have a suggestion to defer the item. Do we have concurrence on that? We don't need to take a vote, Mr. City Attorney?
No, you can just take direction.
Okay. So at this time, do I see nodding heads amongst the council that we'll just simply, we'll give direction to defer this item? Okay. All right. With that done, we're going to move on to presentations. Item N, the water supply sustainability presentation. I believe we have representatives from United Water present. Oh, let me turn on your lectern. There you go.
Appreciate that. Mayor and council members, I have some brochures on some of the, on what we call the bright side of water supply world that we're facing with the drought and everything we've been struggling with. So with that being said, I've got, there he is. I brought John Lindquist with me, and he's our hydrogeologist at United Water Conservation District. I'm a board member at United Water Conservation District, one of 7. I represent a small portion of Camarillo where our boundaries are, and I cover the Oxnard Plains and a part of Oxnard and Port Hueneme. And then we also service, our boundaries extend up to the Santa Clara River to the LA Ventura County line. So we cover Fillmore through Ventura, the cities of Ventura, Port Hueneme, and the Navy bases through our water system and through our recharge systems into the aquifers that we all pump out of. So with that, I'd like to introduce, and by the way, I want to also take a moment to recognize Charlotte Craven and Tony Tremblay, who have been great servers in our community, but also have been very valiantly active into the GMA process for the Fox Canyon over the years. And both of you have done an outstanding job representing the M&I side. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, John is our hydrogeologist, but he also is here to present what we call the improvement of the supply side. We've always heard about the cutbacks we need to conserve, which we need to continue, but we're here to share the good news message of expanding our aquifer to have more storage of clean water, put basically a barrier to stop the seawater intrusion that's coming into us. The object of expanding our projects to have more storage and more capacity to harvest water off the river when it's available and let it rain as much as it can. With that, I'd like to go ahead and John come up here and give his presentation. We're ready for any questions and comments afterwards. So with that, John, would you go ahead?
Thank you, Director Nauman, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Great, perfect. And I didn't want to take too much of your time, and so I've got a short presentation, but we're certainly open for questions afterwards, because I'm going to have to leave out some details of the projects. But like Director Nauman said, the overall message we think is positive, and I believe that's why I was asked to come and speak here tonight. So for the record, I'm John Lindquist, Senior Hydrogeologist at United Water Conservation District, and I'm going to dive right into the presentation. And I'm going to start by just talking about the challenges we face. And these are recognized by the Fox Canyon GMA, supported by a lot of other folks, including United, trying to achieve state-mandated sustainability by 2040. And the two big challenges we have here in the Oxnard and Pleasant Valley basins are partly a deficit of supply versus demand, and partly it's seawater intrusion, both of which Director Nauman talked about. And I'll show you what I mean momentarily, but first let me just point out that we have Oxnard Subbasin outlined in yellow here, Pleasant Valley Basin, and Camarillo on the right side or east side of the map. And then there are a lot of dots there, blues and reds and greens, and those are just where active supply wells existed as of 2015, and nearly all of those are still active. So you can treat those as active water supply wells today, some supplying water for agriculture, some supplying water for municipal industrial uses. There are a few domestic wells in there, but not too many. And the real challenges we're facing, like I said, are on the supply side, and I'm going to do Oxnard first and then Pleasant Valley, but they're kind of intertwined because the aquifers are connected, especially the Fox Canyon aquifer underlying both basins. And in the Oxnard Basin, we have some inflow, recharge, interbasin flow, and some other sources. And we have outflow. And unfortunately, they've been a little bit out of balance to the tune of 5,000 acre-feet, probably since the 1950s, maybe going back even before then. So there's this deficit of supply. You can think of it as your bank account. If you're spending more money, writing more checks every month than you have income, eventually the bank account runs dry. And that's what the state wants us to avoid. That's what we all would like to avoid. And to put that 5,000 acre-feet deficit in context, total pumping in the Oxnard Basin is on the order of 65,000 acre-feet per year. So that's 5,000 acre-feet per year, so on the order of, what, 8%. So it doesn't sound terrible to be short 5,000 acre-feet per year. But some of the inflow is actually seawater, salt water, pouring into the aquifers. So that's, like having counterfeit money flowing into your bank account. You don't want that. You want to avoid having that salt water intrude. So if you don't count that seawater intrusion of 8,000 acre-feet per year as part of your supply, then you're left with an actual imbalance in the Oxnard Basin of about 13,000 acre-feet, or a deficit, I should say, not a balance. We're in deficit between our supply and our demand to the tune of 13,000 acre-feet. And in the Pleasant Valley Basin, closer to home here, we have inflows, and in the long run, the inflows slightly exceed outflow. If you look at the 1985 through, it's actually 1986 through 2015, you actually have accumulation in the account to the tune of 2,000 acre-feet per year. But in the last 10 years, we've been in this horrendous drought. And I think on average, the numbers are more like, even here in Pleasant Valley Basin, you have a net deficit to the tune of 5,000 acre-feet. I don't recall the exact numbers. That's just the last 10 years. We hope in the long run we'll be back on track here in the Pleasant Valley Basin to have a net positive influx of water. But that's not the only problem we're facing. Like I mentioned, there's seawater intrusion as well as a very explicit or specific problem that has to be stopped. So in addition to having this, like I said, this deficit problem, we have seawater intrusion occurring, kind of a distinct problem. It only occurs in the Oxnard Basin, but it's required to be dealt with under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act that the state put out back in 2014. And these days, most of that seawater intrusion occurs around Port Hueneme. Well, it's a relatively small amount. Most of it occurs around Point Magoo, where there's a lot of pumping, and that it's driven. So all this pumping down here is effectively drawing in seawater. Pumping in both the Pleasant Valley and the southern or southeastern part of the Oxnard Basin is drawing in seawater from the shoreline into the aquifers, the Fox Canyon aquifer, as well as some of the overlying aquifers like the Oxnard and Magoo aquifers. So that's the secondary challenge. The other thing we need to stop, like I mentioned. And let's see if I can get the slide to advance. And that could happen even if that could happen even if we get the basins in balance. We don't have a net deficit. You can still have seawater intrusion. So again, I'll just say one more time, it's a distinct issue that needs to be dealt with. And maybe, is there a way, let's see, am I doing this wrong? I'm hitting the buttons. The laser works. Is it possible that someone else could advance the slide for me? Okay, good. Good, thank you. So the main points here of the presentation, though, isn't the doom and gloom aspect of it. It's that by expanding some existing proven sources that we've been using for decades in the Oxnard Plain and Pleasant Valley, plus a few new supplies proposed by stakeholders, including the city of Camarillo, we can balance out that pumping and the recharge, we think, before 2030. SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, requires us to achieve sustainability by 2040. So we would be basically halving the number of years it would take to get to what we think is pretty darn close to sustainability. And a second point, seawater intrusion can be contained, and we can even reverse it. We can do better than just stop seawater intrusion. We can start pulling it back towards the ocean. I'll show that in a moment. And on top of the achieving sustainability, that absolute requirement, these projects have some additional benefits as well that go beyond sustainability, and I'll touch on those in a moment. So what projects am I talking about to achieve this balance between recharge and discharge, or supply and demand? And the groundwater sustainability plans, the GSPs, for Pleasant Valley and Oxnard Basin, they both assumed a few projects would be put in place. These were all that were really available at the time that the GMA felt comfortable adding. They felt like these projects are well enough developed that we can put them in the plan. And one of them is Freeman Expansion. That's United's project, which basically just means diverting a little more water off the Santa Clara River. One of them was Oxnard's Advanced Water Purification Facility, and they would deliver water to the farms to the tune of 4,500 acre-feet. And then the third option they had was incentivized fallowing, as they called it. In other words, paying farmers to fallow their fields in both the Pleasant Valley and Oxnard basins. And I think most of that was planned for the Pleasant Valley Basin, actually. Since that time, when the GSPs were released in 2020, everybody got together and they started working on additional projects, or I should say expansion, really, of some existing projects. For the most part, we're not talking about anything new or all that innovative. We're talking about using what's worked before and improving on them. So, although one new thing is United started purchasing more state water project water than our Table A allocation when it became available through transfers in Article 21. And we've actually been able to provide over 6,000 acre-feet per year for the last few years to the basins, mostly as recharge and surface water deliveries to Pleasant Valley County Water District and some of the farmers in the Oxnard Plain. Another project has been the recharge of State Water Project Interconnect flush water. So Ventura is going to start taking State Water Project water, and they have to flush their pipelines. It's not very much. We're talking 100 to 500 acre-feet, but we'll take that flush water that they can't use and recharge it in our recharge basins just north of Pleasant Valley Basin in the Oxnard Basin. A variety of proponents, Pleasant Valley County Water District here in Pleasant Valley Basin have proposed expanding the Conejo Creek diversions and using private reservoirs and some pipeline interconnects probably coming online by 2025 that will allow more complete use of available resources on Conejo Creek. And they think that could improve supplies by 2,500 acre-feet per year or more. Oxnard wants to take their AWPF, their Advanced Water Purification System, and actually expand it to 7,000 acre-feet. I didn't get a precise timeline for this, but it sounded like they were talking the late 2020, so 2028 is what I put in the chart here. And then finally, kind of a cornerstone that's required to stop that seawater intrusion is United's proposed extraction barrier and brackish water treatment project, where we'll develop a barrier to seawater intrusion through groundwater extraction, and then instead of just throwing that water away, that we call it brackish water because it's got some seawater in it, but it's also got some fresh water, so it's not quite as salty as the ocean, still too salty to use. But we'll treat that and provide really pure water. The water we extract, about half of it will be supplied to users on the plain, whether it's agriculture or municipalities. But the important feature of that, and I'll show you a slide in a minute, is that it will stop the seawater intrusion, which really boosts the yield of the basin. And if we do all that, then maybe we don't need to pay farmers to leave their fields fallow, leave them unplanted for certain seasons or even years on end. So that would be the goal, to keep, this would allow us, in theory, to keep being able to provide agriculture in our cities as much water as they've had in the past, which, as we understand it, is what most folks want. And just to show you how this all stacks up, so this is that 13,000 acre-feet deficit I was talking about in the Oxnard Plain. Even as of, well, let me go back here. starting in 2015, Oxnard had already started supplying some recycled water to agriculture. So we already got kind of ahead of the game. We've been ahead of the game for 5 years now. Some of that 13,000 acre feet of deficit we've already started to fill in. And then I mentioned United's state water project imports to the tune of 6,000 acre feet per year or more. So we've already filled in half of that deficit or that gap of 13,000 acre feet approximately. And by 2027 is our target. Some projects, like I said, Oxnard's project may come online in 2028 rather than 2027. But in that time frame, certainly before 2030, we hope to have recycled water to ag from not only Oxnard, but have the Pleasant Valley project, Camarillo's expansion of recycled water, and I think Camarillo is contributing recycled water, has been for years. We hope that we can better distribute that across the plain to make full use of it. That'll take up a pretty large portion of that deficit. Again, United would continue with our state water project imports. These rectangles on this side aren't necessarily to scale. Some of these projects might be a little bigger or a little smaller than what I'm showing. Freeman expansion, United's project where we'll take a little more surface water, especially the muddy flows that aren't of use to fish. We hope, with climate change, we expect to see bigger flows or bigger floods at times and then longer droughts. So we really need to take that muddier water when it's available, which is going to be less frequently. And then finally, treated brackish water that I talked about coming from our EB project, the extraction barrier project. And that would basically fill the gap. Plus, Camarillo recently submitted to the Fox Canyon GMA some proposals for more stormwater capture and recharge, which could add another 500 to 1,500 acre feet per year to Pleasant Valley's overall water balance, which is fantastic. They haven't developed these projects very far at all, but they look promising to me, and I'm looking forward to see them further developed. And finally, United wants to build out additional phases of Freeman expansion by 2030s as climate change kicks in, again, to take those high flows. And it would give us even additional water on top of what we need to fill the gap. But we still feel that's probably going to prove important, partly because it's really high quality water, much better than our groundwater, much lower salt contents, much less nitrates and iron and some other things that people don't want for good reason in the water. It'll provide a buffer or a factor of safety in our overall supply in case we have an earthquake or other unforeseen events that affect our water supplies. It'll increase local supply so we don't have to rely so much on expensive imports. And like I mentioned before, it allows us to respond better to climate change and resilience. And then the other challenge I mentioned was stopping seawater intrusion. This is the other aspect of that EB water project I was talking about. As of 2020, United has mapped out the inland extent of seawater intrusion here, just north of Point Mugu Naval Air Station and across Hueneme Road to about where Port Hueneme is. So it's advanced in the last 5 years. It's moved in a little farther than we would have liked. So we're planning on building these extraction wells around Point Mugu, and what that will do over time is change the hydraulic gradient. It will draw that seawater intrusion front back southwards towards these extraction wells, and we've modeled where we expect the inland extent of seawater intrusion to be in 2070, 50 years from now, at the end of the GSP period. And we are predicting or forecasting that we'll see a couple of square miles that are currently salted up and unusable become open for freshwater storage. We're going to fill that, replace the saltwater there with freshwater, which gives us more storage in the event of future droughts and allows more, well, I don't know about more pumping, but pumping in areas that right now might be impacted by seawater. So beneficial to farmers and municipalities. And I mentioned other benefits of these projects, and I'm not going to go through every check on this list, but I'll just say that several of these projects enhance our resilience, which really means they're drought-proof projects. Like the extraction barrier, for instance, it keeps going year after year. It doesn't matter whether we're in a drought or not, and same with recycled water. Most of the projects improve water quality compared to existing groundwater. A couple of the projects reduce greenhouse gases to a significant degree. They take very low energy to operate. Several of them help disadvantaged communities. Now, they're mostly in the Oxnard Basin, but it's an important factor for sure. We want to be able to make sure that folks have clean water that isn't harming them. All the projects help preserve farmland, which I understand is a goal for most of us in the area. And then several of them also are very low cost, far lower cost than, say, imported water through Metropolitan Water District. And so an additional benefit as well. So what have we accomplished to date? I'm almost done. United and other agencies we really did respond. A lot of folks have responded to the GMA's call for new water supply projects. And they've got added to the 2021 annual report, and now we have grant funding to the tune of about $14 or $15 million, I think, for these projects between the two basins. Pleasant Valley County Water District got a good chunk of that money. United and Fox Canyon GMA got the other part of that money. United is, like I said earlier, we've already increased the amount of water we're purchasing through the State Water Project. And by the way, this isn't the same as Metropolitan Water District. We've gotten most of this water for $200 an acre foot because it's not treated, it's not being wheeled through the Cayuga system. It's water we run down the river from Pyramid Lake and Castaic Lake. And Oxnard is completing their Wainimi Road pipeline extension, so this year they're going to be capable of delivering a lot more recycled water to agriculture, which is good news. And we've already got design and planning underway for a lot of these new projects. In fact, we're at 100% design on some of them, so it's just a matter of breaking out the shovels and starting to build them. Not all the projects. And like I said, we're really expanding, for the most part, proven sources of water. So altogether, these projects, we feel, comprise a physical solution, which can be a legal term. I'm a hydrogeologist, not a lawyer. But all I'll say is right now there are there's a couple lawsuits going on with regards to the GSPs and looking for adjudication. We think this could provide an answer that gives everybody the water they need. And maybe folks then will be spending their water not on attorneys, no offense to attorneys, but spending them on getting actual water in our pipes here in the Oxnard and Pleasant Valley basins. We still have a few more details to work out. We really are looking, we're like at 95% of where we need to be. We want to look at injection to limit seawater intrusion at Port Wainimi, and we're already coordinating with the Navy on exactly where we can build extraction wells, monitoring wells on their site. By the way, they're real excited about getting a secure source of fresh water directly on their base, so they don't have to worry about pipelines and all the security threats that come with that. So that will keep the Navy here, hopefully, for decades. And we need to really get together with project stakeholders, residents in the county, and make sure that we know exactly what they need. Again, we've got the big picture all figured out, but there are options and alternatives, kind of fine details that might, if people come to us and say, hey, it'd really help me if you could extend a pipeline over here to my city or my farm, we can probably work that out. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects, so if we have to make some adjustments, we'd be happy to do that if it helped everybody out. And with that, I went a little over, my apologies, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Mr. Tremblay? Yeah, oh, comments? Yeah. Yeah, questions? Do you have a question?
I don't have a question, just,
Comments? Lead us off, Mr.
yeah,
Tremblay.
I have a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. First of all, so full disclosure, I was privileged to represent United Water Conservation District as its legal counsel for many, many years. And so you can take this as biased statements, but I'm very proud of United. First thing I want to say is that United Water Conservation District staff, including Mr. Lindquist, they are the recognized go-to source for groundwater modeling in our local groundwater basins and for providing solutions. So I really want to compliment you, John, and you, Dan, the board of directors and staff at United, for what is really a leadership and a focus on the supply side of this equation, and that is key. So contextually, when you've got the demand that we have, and we have problems consisting of both seawater intrusion as well as over-extraction, you really need to focus on supply side solutions. So notwithstanding the adjudication process, which is going to go on for several years, and no disrespect to lawyers, having been one in that, but with a different hat on now, what you're seeing United do, and what you're seeing folks in these local basins do, is what you likely will see many groundwater basins statewide doing because of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, because it's forcing folks to look at the sustainability of the groundwater basins, and to the extent that they are over-extracting, they need to come up with more sources of supply. Mrs. Craven can teach the course on this. She really can, and she was on Fox Canyon GMA for many, many years. The extraction barrier project that Mr. Lindquist pointed out is a key project They are fully in partnership with Naval Base Ventura County. Naval Base Ventura County is putting a high priority on that project. I know they're in the planning stage and on that. We, of course, here in the city of Camarillo, we've made an extraordinary investment in our desalter, both in terms of funds and talents. But the takeaway, here's the takeaway message. In a recent United letter, the groundwater sustainability plans, and I'm just paraphrasing, quote, anticipate that without the proposed additional water supply projects, ag and municipal pumping would have to be drastically reduced, 35 to 40% by 2040 to achieve sustainability goals. That's under Sigma. Now, go to the other side. The evaluation on the yields of these proposed projects, together with modeling of future groundwater conditions, that existing shortfall in water supply can be eliminated or minimized, if not eliminated, and seawater intrusion halted before 2030, provided that people go forward on these projects. And they're expensive, they're obviously complicated, there's a lot to do. I want to compliment you, John, for going into a very complicated subject in a very short period of time. Anyway, I really want to compliment you, and the work that United is doing is very important, and I will stop talking. Thanks.
Sure.
If I can add to that, Tony, thank you. You said it very well. And Charlotte, truly, you could truly teach the course for all of us. I've known this young lady, we're in the same group, but I've known her for a long time. But I would like to add, Tony mentioned what a great job the city has done and how long it's taken to work on your project over there by the library on Lewis Road. The projects that we're describing today we're looking at in 2027 and earlier getting something. There's just not talk. They're already moving in process. And like Tony mentioned, and John, we had this great partnership with the Ventura County Navy Base group, where it's already in the process of getting our wells started for treatment for engineering. We're looking at pipeline deliveries. The key with any recycled or brackish water process is never shut the system off. So if we're not delivering water, we want to send it, frankly, we're going to send it back to our spreading grounds up by Satakoy. And with those spreading grounds, to show you how lucky we are in our region, in those spreading grounds, we have roughly several hundred acres of spreading grounds. So they can take 10 to 14 feet of water per day. So when we're harvesting water off the river, it just percolates right back into the aquifers that serve and take care of all this. So thank you for your time, for letting us come and participate and share the good news for you.
Kevin, did you have some comments?
Just a couple of quick questions, because people are asking me about this. Is there a way that we can reuse and treat the seawater that is coming in? And the second part of the question is that this is all really, really positive and good stuff. How are we going to pay for it? I know you kind of brushed upon that, but will there be grants and whatnot? Probably several ways, but I was wondering if you could just take a few minutes and just kind of maybe talk about that.
My response to that is, like all of us, we're all working at federal and state levels at many different agencies to get the funding and getting as far as grants go. So a lot of the things like John mentioned, we just received from the DWR $14 million of almost 15 actually for the two basins to keep moving forward. And we're working with our federal lobbyist, and we encourage with communication with your folks in the city of leagues to help in the process for Ventura County to continue getting those grants and so forth to move forward. So it's not coming out of technically we're sending the money to the federal government. We'd like to get some of it back for projects to protect ourselves. And yes, there'll be some rate increases probably, but what that is, we're not there yet, but we're trying to get as much grant money and funding and joint partnerships to make this work together.
And seawater, can that be treated and reused?
I would say what we're doing with the brackish water, we're having a blend, and what we're doing is basically with the well, we're building a fence so the seawater stops at that point. So at that point it stops, it can't keep coming in, so that's good news. The opposite of that is what Orange County has done, is they are injecting water to do the same barrier process, but you have to have a water supply. They do for their sanitation system. We don't. We're doing the opposite. We're kind of pulling it back up to generate that fence and that barrier. So it's a blend of water and with chlorides in it and some seawater blending. And so we're technically pulling from both sides to make that barrier. And in essence, it's a cheaper process than dealing with seawater.
May I jump in?
Yes.
So what I'll say is, yeah, we absolutely are. This is the environmentally preferred way of doing seawater extraction and desalination today. Rather than have an open ocean outlet or inlet, I guess you'd say, the preference is to have coastal extraction wells so that you're just drawing the water in through the aquifer and you're not harming sea life in that part of the process. So this is effectively, as Director Nauman said, it's a blend of water. That's why it's called brackish, but it is removing the seawater that's already in place, and it will continue to draw in some seawater. So we're achieving virtually everything you can get from seawater desalination in an environmentally preferred way that is also less costly, at least the way we're planning on doing it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Craven?
Yeah, I had asked for you to come and make a presentation because I thought the council needed to hear all the things that you were doing. So thank you, and it was very informative.
Mr. Tremblay?
One other comment, and it'll be short. So think about that extraction barrier project and what's going on relative to those. It is absolutely analogous to what we are doing here with our desalter. We're cleaning up the groundwater, we're achieving redundancy and resiliency and reliability in our water supply. At the same time, it's an environmental benefit, and it's a win-win. So it's very similar to what is being proposed out on the coast. And it is less expensive than going to a seawater desal model.
Ms. Santangelo?
When I decided to get involved in local government, I was told water and sewer. And that's the most important thing.
Keep the water flowing and the toilets flushing.
We're
And the
covering it
potholes
all
filled.
tonight. And I don't think I understood how complicated water is. And I've had a number of people ask me some questions through texts or Facebook messaging, and my response is always, this is a conversation. This is not something that we can, hash out in a couple of texts. So anyway, that's just my way of saying thank you for being here and explaining this. It's so important to talk about all the things we're doing for our sustainability and for our water. So thank you. It was a really good presentation, and I appreciate you being here and all that you're doing. Thank you.
And I'll simply add, thank you very much. This was very informational.
You're welcome, and thank you for your time.
Thanks. All right, we will move on to item O, the 2021 crime statistics. And we have Commander Tennyson, who is going to give us a presentation. I know that we look forward to this every single year. Or at least I do.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and citizens. Appreciate you all giving me the time to come and talk about crime in Camarillo in 2021. As you all know, increases in crime have been a big issue in our neighboring counties and across the state and across the country, really. So I'm happy to be able to talk about what we're doing here in Camarillo and across the Sheriff's Office to keep our residents safe in Ventura County. You all have seen parts of this presentation before, but for those who haven't, I'm going to go over it again. We report crime to the FBI through the Uniform Crime Reporting System. We report crime, total crime, and we break it up into two parts, violent offenses and property offenses. Violent offenses include murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, so just the four crimes. And then property crimes include a whole host of crimes like residential burglary, commercial burglary, grand and petty theft, arson, and vehicle theft. We have part two crimes that we also keep track of, but the FBI really they focus on the part one crimes that I defined for you here. So just a quick narrative of crime in Camarillo. Last year we had a phenomenal year, the lowest overall crime rate on record in the city of Camarillo. This year, we ticked up just a titch. We had a total of 895 Part 1 crimes, which is an increase of 20 crimes over last year. And that comes out to a total of 2% overall. We had kind of a mixed bag, though, when you break it down between violent offenses and property crimes. Our violent offenses, we're looking at crime rates per 1,000 people. We hit 0.55 violent crimes per 1,000 people this year, which is actually another decrease in our violent crime rate. We dropped another 9%, and this is a record low for us in violent crime. And one that I'm proud of our residents, I'm proud of our cops who are investigating violent crime, who are preventing violent crime, because that's been the major topic in law enforcement around the country. And, you know, right next door to us down in Los Angeles County is the major increases in violent crime. And we just didn't see that here in Camarillo. As a matter of fact, we saw another record low in violent crime. Our property crime rate, however, ticked up a little bit this year for the first time in a couple of years. We went up to about 12.29 property crimes per 1,000 people, which is up from 11.75 in 2020 and a 4% increase. And as I move on in the presentation and dig into the details a little bit more, I'll tell you where we experienced those crime trends. As an example of the busyness of our deputies, we had 17,900 calls for service last year in Camarillo, just barely up from 17,874. So almost flat from last year to this year. That's a lot of calls for service for a town of 60,000 people. So we made, during those calls for service and during self-initiated proactive policing, our deputies made just over 3,000 arrests last year, compared to about 3,300 last year, which is a decrease of about 9%. And there's a whole host of reasons for those decreases in arrests. In large part, that comes from us still dealing with the pandemic. In order to keep our deputies safe, starting in 2020, we reduced slightly some of the activities that we would normally do before COVID came along. So proactive probation searches, parole searches, where we have folks who, you know, have gotten in trouble in the past and they're on probation or parole with search terms. Oftentimes we'd go pay visits to them at their homes to ensure that they're in compliance with their probation and parole terms. We eliminated those during COVID. We told our deputies no proactive probation and parole searches because we didn't want them unnecessarily going into homes and risk getting sick from COVID and further reducing our staffing levels. It just has this bad cycle of effects. So we reduced that during COVID, and we just recently restarted proactive probation and parole searches. So that's a big reason why you see our arrest numbers lower last year than the year before. This is a kind of a graphic representation of violent crime in Camarillo since 1991, since we started tracking the statistics. And you see that the overall trend for the last 30 years has been a pretty significant downward trend, ending this last year with 0.55, again, the lowest we've had in recorded history here in Camarillo. That same historical perspective for property crimes shows the same overall decline in property crimes from, you know, back in 91, about 30 property crimes per 1,000 residents, down to 12.29 property crimes per 1,000 last year. And after 2 years in a row of essentially flat and record low, we ticked up just a little bit this year. And again, I'll provide you with some information on what we ticked up on and what we're going to do to address that. I have already started doing to address it, and we'll continue throughout 2022. I want to break down crimes here again, just with a little bit more detail, and I'll break it down between violent crime and property crime. So you can see last year we did have one homicide. We started 2021 off on kind of a bad note. We had a homicide out at Mobile Home Park in January. That was after we'd also had, you know, at the end of the previous year, we'd had a couple of gang shootings here. So we saw a slight uptick in that. The shooting out at the trailer park resulted in the death of a young man, and within about 12 hours after that shooting, we'd found the suspects up in Bakersfield, worked with Bakersfield PD, and had both of the suspects in custody within about 12 hours of that crime occurring. So although our number one priority is to prevent crime here, our other priority is that when it does happen, and inevitably it's going to, we want to be hunting those guys down and putting them in custody and getting them off the streets. And we did that in the one homicide we had last year. So a big success for us. Our rape category was down significantly. We had 16 the year before, and we only had 5 this year. So that's a wonderful number to see drop. In those 5 rapes that we had, in 3 of them, the suspects were known to the victims prior to the incident occurring, and in 2 of them, they met through social media. They met online. Our robberies were down significantly as well last year, from 17 to 13. That's it's interesting, though, that the robberies that we did have, of those 13 robberies, 8 of them started out as shoplifts at local local stores. So where somebody goes in, maybe is going to steal an item, who knows, it could be a $10 item. And when loss prevention or a store employee steps in front of that person and they get shoved out of the way, or the suspect says something threatening, it turns from a shoplift to a robbery and a violent offense. So 8 of those were started out as shoplifts last year, which is, that's part of the education for us, is to make sure folks know that it's really not worth getting in the way of a shoplift, because oftentimes those robberies turn violent and there's no reason for a store employee to become a victim of a robbery or a beating or something like that over property. So that's part of our education process and the relationships we've built with our local stores to make sure they know it's not worth that. Our aggravated assaults are also down just slightly. And interestingly enough, we had 19. The 5-year average for us is 31 assaults. So not only were we down year over year, but on the 5-year average, we're still down significantly on aggravated assaults. So those are resulting in that lowest violent crime rate that we've ever had in history, those declines there. This is where we start seeing some of the interesting trends that happened last year when we look at property crimes. So our residential burglaries still at another record low. 51 last year was our record low. We had 51 in 2020 was our record low, and we went down to 31 last year. So we set another record low. But we'd had other areas in Ventura County, particularly on the east end of the county, that were experiencing some increases in residential burglaries. It didn't make its way over here, but I will tell you, so far this year, we have seen some increases in 2022. One of the big problems with residential burglaries is the South American groups, particularly the Chileans, are coming in groups, gangs almost, and they're doing burglaries in affluent neighborhoods. And one of the trends we're seeing is affluent neighborhoods that back up to open spaces. And so these folks come in undetected in an open space. They watch for a little bit, see if somebody's home, and if they're not, they break out a back door and go in and ransack a house, and they're in and out in a very short time. So that's a trend we're seeing this year that we didn't see as much last year, and we're developing some strategies to address that. Commercial burglaries were up last year fairly significantly, and that's an area we're going to address further as I move on in the presentation. Our biggest increase is grand theft. 347 grand thefts reported in Camarillo last year compared to 274 the year before. And when I tell you what that is here in a minute, it'll be pretty obvious to you. Our petty thefts were down slightly, our vehicle thefts were down slightly, and our arsons were also down slightly. And nothing significant to note trend-wise in the vehicle theft or the arson categories. But the trends we did identify last year were catalytic converter thefts and commercial burglaries, and I don't think that's probably a surprise to anybody who reads the newspaper or watches the news. So I'd like to get into the details on that a little bit. In Camarillo in 2020, we had 64 catalytic converters stolen, and in 2021, we had 139 catalytic converters stolen. So a significant increase here, and that is not just a Camarillo trend, it's not a Ventura County trend, it's not even a California trend, that's a nationwide trend in increases in catalytic converters. We all know that they take the catalytic converters for the precious metals that are inside them. The chart on the right is a breakdown of the vehicles that were stolen, catalytic converters were stolen of most often. It's a little difficult to read, I see here, but 37% of vehicles that had catalytic converters stolen were Toyota Priuses. And in particular were Toyota Priuses from 2004 to 2009. And 25% of vehicles were Honda Accords, same model, same year model, 2004 to 2009. And so we're actually working on addressing that issue now as well, getting out messaging to folks who own those models. I mean, that represents more than 50% of the vehicles that have had their catalytic converter stolen. So if we can provide crime tips to those folks and some ideas on how to keep their cars safe and keep themselves from being victims, we can reduce this number pretty significantly, I think. So what were the strategies we implemented last year to address this? First and foremost, our Moore Park Station started the Etch and Catch program in early March. And this is a program that we'd used in years past. I found a press release from a local business from 2009 where we'd seen some upticks, and we did the same thing in 2009 where we etched the license plate number on to the catalytic converter, and we spray paint with high-temperature paint the Ventura County Sheriff's and a star on it. And so that what we're trying to accomplish with that is two things. Number one, we hope that a crook who gets under a car and steals it may see that, and it may deter them. We do know here in Camarillo last year that we had 2 or 3 cars who had that on and still got their catalytic converter stolen. So do we know if it prevented it from some people? No, we really don't, and we do know that they were still stolen. What that really does for us, though, is we've had instances where we stop a car at 2 or 3 in the morning, and we have catalytic converters in the back of the car. And if it's just a catalytic converter, you have no clue who the victim is, because it could be a victim from Santa Barbara, from Ventura, who knows where. And without a victim to match a catalytic converter to, you don't have a crime. So what this does is when a cop, whether it's a Ventura County cop or whether it's a cop in LA or a CHP officer who stops a car at 3 in the morning driving in the freeway, sees a catalytic converter with a license plate etched into it and the sheriff's star, that's called a clue, and they can now tie back to the victim, and we find a victim and we can arrest people for committing that crime. So that's the first thing we did here in Camarillo back in March. We partnered with 6 different auto businesses in Camarillo. We provided them with the paint, with the etching, with the etching tools, and they agreed that if anybody came in for a regular car service and they wanted this done to their catalytic converter, they would do it at no charge to them. And it was a pretty successful program. The other thing that we did later in the year, though, as we saw a number of people take advantage of the Etch and Catch program, but we still saw catalytic converter thefts continue to rise. So we worked with a couple of the other local businesses, the auto businesses, and in a similar fashion, they agreed to install theft prevention devices at no charge if the person brought it in themselves and if they were having another service done to their vehicle. What you see here are a couple of examples of a catalytic converter theft device. The first one on the top is just really, it's a metal plate that goes and covers the catalytic converter. And the idea behind this is that you can't go in there with a battery-operated Sawzall and cut off the catalytic converter in 30 or 45 seconds like you can if there's no prevention device on there. It's going to be louder, it's going to take more time, and those are things that the crooks who are doing this, they don't want to draw attention to themselves at 3 in the morning. So that's a nice prevention device. The one on the bottom has some braided steel cables that essentially encompasses the catalytic converter. Can things still be stolen? Yes, they sure can, but this is a heck of a deterrent for that. And so you can buy these devices for $150 to $250, which seems like a lot of money, but if your catalytic converter gets stolen off of your car, you're going to pay $1,000 to $4,000 to replace that catalytic converter. So this is actually cheap prevention if you were actually to be victimized. So these are things we're recommending as we continue to move forward in dealing with the catalytic converter thefts. And then, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we've identified specific models of cars that have been stolen, and we're going to be doing some targeted education for those folks to let them know, hey, you are potentially, you're high likelihood that you could be a victim, and here's some tips. We'll be doing it both through public press releases and potentially, depending upon how many of those folks we identify in Camarillo, we'll probably do some direct mailing to those folks as well. And we've done similar things like that in the past regarding residential burglaries when we identified specific families that were being targeted. We were proactive and contacted those families and let them know what was going on, and it really helped out with that program. So we're considering doing the same thing with this if it's not thousands and thousands of vehicles in Camarillo that are that make and model. So we'll see how that plays out. The other crime category that we saw the trend in is commercial burglary. Of the 61 reported commercial burgs we had last year, which was compared to 49 the year before, we thought about 20 of them were from organized crews that come up and they target specifically small businesses. In Camarillo, the businesses that were targeted last year, we had 9 small restaurants, 4 smoke and cigar shops, 2 small markets and liquor stores, 2 salons, and a pharmacy. And the goal for these is a little bit different from each one. The restaurants, cigar shops, and liquor stores, it's the MO is to break a front window and to go in and look for the cash register, steal the cash register, and if a safe is readily available, they're going to steal that and get out quickly. The salons, actually, we had folks were targeting products inside the salon stores that happen. And then the pharmacies are for drugs. And I'll tell you, some of these numbers here, like we had 61 last year, and one of the things we saw with the pharmacy burglary is that the pharmacy is one business in a row of businesses. And rather than break directly into that pharmacy, the front door is alarmed and we're going to get notified and we're going to be out there pretty quick, actually broke into a business 3 doors down, and they cut through the drywall of all those businesses until they got their way into the pharmacy. And then they stole from the pharmacy and took off. In that instance, every business that had a hole cut through the wall is considered a commercial burglary because they entered with the intent to commit a theft. It might not have been a theft from that business, but it was a theft in their ultimate destination. So we had that occur, and that was 4 burglaries, even though one business was the one that was targeted. So we had 61, which is still way higher than we'd like, but just to provide a little bit of context in how some of those work. So what are the strategies we're doing for commercial burglaries? One of the things we're doing is, because we know a lot of these are crews that come from our neighboring county to the south, we work with the law enforcement agencies down there, with LAPD, with LASO. We work with them regularly on burglary crew identification and the sharing of information so that we are aware of who they're looking at, they're aware of who we're looking at. We share that information so that if there's a way for us to identify those crews before they get up here, we can target them. And so, there have been times where we get information shared with us that, a crew is making its way to Ventura County, and we know that, and so we can adjust our patrols in the middle of the night. For example, if we have a residential burglary in Simi Valley, our stations and our units will get notified as well. Hey, it's 3 a.m, they just had a pharmacy targeted in Simi Valley. We'll do the same thing to them so that they know to extra patrol those, because either they're committing a series of them in one night on the way up, or they're going to commit a series of them in one night on the way back. So that information sharing is a good way for us to alert one another and just be more prepared in the event that they're deciding to make their way up here. We utilize technology like our automated license plate readers, so that when known suspects in known vehicles come up here, we have license plate readers deployed in areas throughout the city that can provide us with notifications that these folks are in town. And we know which license plate reader it is, what location that's at, and we can get deputies to flood an area to look for specific makes and models of cars. And again, with the goal of stopping them before they go and make a victim out of one of our businesses. And then we do saturation patrols during likely times and at likely locations. I've told you all before, we have a very robust crime analysis unit at the sheriff's office. They're constantly combing through crime data to identify days of the weeks, times of the day when these crimes are occurring. They communicate with our patrol stations regularly and provide us information in a way that tells us, hey, look, these are hitting every night at Wednesday nights for the last 5 weeks. You might want to be here Wednesday night. And so they help us kind of do a predictive style of policing and have people out there when we think crimes are likely to occur. One question that's always asked during this presentation, and in the past I haven't included a slide on it, but I wanted to this year because I knew it would be asked, and that is, what impact do the Camarillo outlets have on crime in Camarillo? The answer is a smaller and smaller impact, and I'll tell you why. In 2021, the outlets had 129 total crimes. Not surprisingly, 126 of those were thefts. One was a robbery, which started as a shoplift theft, and we had 2 motor vehicles thefts. So when I told you we had 12.29 property crimes, this 126 thefts and 2 motor vehicle thefts represented 1.84 of those 12.29 crimes. The robbery is a violent crime, and so our violent crime rate would have ticked down to about 0.53 from 0.55. So it has an impact, but for context, in 2019, we had 223 total crimes at the outlets, which amounted to 3.15 crimes per 1,000 people. And I attribute that to the directed enforcement unit that we created a couple years ago, where we took 2 of our patrol deputies, we took them out of patrol and created the directed enforcement unit to go build relationships with our loss prevention officers at the outlets and at the big box stores, so that we had an idea. Those loss prevention officers, they know who the crooks are. A lot of these crooks will come up and they'll hit the same stores over and over and over again. So by building those relationships, we would have the loss prevention at the outlets call us when the people, if they saw them even walking in the store, they'd call us and say, hey, this known thief is here. They just came into the store. Our deputies were out there, and they would arrest these folks before something happened. So I attribute this reduction in impact from the outlets to the relationships we've been able to build over the last year and 3/4 since we created the Directed Enforcement Unit. Boy, those numbers are small. Traffic, I'm sorry, I'll remember that next time. Traffic, we had some issues with traffic in the city last year. We saw some increases. We had 1 fatality last year. We had none the year before. The fatality did not involve alcohol or drugs. It was an elderly driver who got confused and ended in a tragic accident where he hit a motorcyclist. So our injury accidents, again, I talk about a mixed bag. Our injury accidents were down 11%, but our non-injury accidents were up 10%. Our DUI crashes were up. And early in the year, as we saw those DUI crashes start to go up, we increased DUI enforcement. And so ultimately, our DUI arrests were up 9%. I broke down the DUI arrests to provide some context for you, and you all can't read it there, so I'm going to read it to you. Our DUI alcohol arrests went from 171 to 235, which is 37% increase. Our DUI drug arrests actually went down, so from 69 to 43. And our DUI drug and alcohol combined went from 9 to 2. And we've seen increases in all of those so far this year, all of those different combinations of alcohol and drugs this year, and a decrease so far this year in DUI traffic collisions. Our hazardous violations, almost flat, about 3,800 hazardous citations. Those hazardous citations are moving citations, so not equipment violations, lights out, license plate, hanging off the car. There are speeding tickets, there are unsafe lane changes, the kind of things that cause accidents in our city. And those, when we're looking to reduce traffic accidents, we focus on hazardous violations because study after study shows that when traffic collisions are an issue and you increase hazardous violation citations, that traffic collisions go down. So what are we going to do this year? We're going to increase DUI enforcement through our OTS grant funding, number one. And we're taking one of our traffic cars, we're adjusting hours that would be more likely times when we experience people driving drunk on the street, so later at night and on certain nights of the week. So we're going to be changing those hours, modifying those hours and the days that they're working to have our deputies out more often when those crimes are likely to occur. We're going to be doing some DUI education at the local high school. We'll be bringing out the DUI trailer that is coordinated countywide. We don't own it ourselves, but it's the crash car, and people can put on the goggles to see what it's like to be drunk and how it affects your reaction time. And then one of the big things is most of our collisions are from either new drivers, young drivers, or elderly drivers. And so we haven't been able to hold those classes that we've held forever, the Start Smart and the elderly driver classes. And so we're restarting those now that we're open for business from COVID. So I think that's going to be an important part of our strategy to reduce the traffic collisions and the DUIs in the city. One of the other measures of police effectiveness is response times. And last year we came in a little higher than I'd like to see, but still within our goal. Our goal is to provide response times for priority 1 calls. And the response time is from the time we get a call at dispatch to the time a deputy sheriff arrives on scene. And those are the kind of the high priority calls, the fights that are in progress, the domestic disturbances in progress. Those are the kind of calls that we consider a primary or a priority 1 call. And so we're at about 6.87 minutes for priority 1 calls. That's up a little bit from last year. We're at 6.42, which I think my calculations said it was about 28 seconds difference from last year to this year. Maybe it doesn't sound like a lot, but to me, 28 seconds makes a heck of a lot of difference depending upon what the crime is. To the person who's being assaulted or whatever, 28 seconds makes a lot of difference. So our goal this year is to get that number back down into that mid-6 range where we'd been for the last 3 years. One other thing I wanted to talk to you all about was the overdose death. The medical examiner just released the report for 2021 showing that overdose deaths are up pretty significantly over 2020 in Ventura County. And so I think it's appropriate to talk about where we're at here in Camarillo with that. So in countywide, overdose deaths were a 33% increase over 2020 and a 94% increase over 2019, which is staggering. 196 of those 289 overdose deaths involved an opiate, with 164 coming from fentanyl. Fentanyl is something we are seeing in our communities on the rise, and it's incredibly dangerous. I'm sure you all saw, we had 2 detectives from our Thousand Oaks station down in Reseda doing a search warrant a couple of weeks ago. They opened a little shaving kit. Just opening the shaving kit caused some fentanyl to get up in the air, and our deputy passed out. She overdosed right there on the spot. Her partner, who was in the room with her, drug her out, and he too started experiencing symptoms. Thankfully, 2 years ago, the sheriff put Narcan in all of our patrol cars, in their jails, and all of our detective units have Narcan as well, so that when they go to crime scenes, they have it available to them. In this instance, the deputies ran and got their Narcan. They gave this deputy 4 doses of Narcan, and it did not revive her. She got in an ambulance, and she was given 2 more doses of Narcan by the paramedics, and it finally revived her. She was hospitalized for a couple of days, in pretty serious condition there with that fentanyl overdose. So it hits home for us. Our deputies are exposed to this every time they arrest a drug user, and we are seeing more and more fentanyl in the streets. And we're not just seeing fentanyl by itself. We're seeing people who are lacing marijuana with fentanyl, who are mixing cocaine with fentanyl. So it's incredibly dangerous. Here in Camarillo, we had 15 overdose deaths last year, which is actually down from 2020. We had 18 in 2020. So that's a good thing. 12 of those 15 deaths involved opiates, and 7 of them involved fentanyl here in Camarillo. We had 37 total overdose, which is, fatal and non-fatal combined. That's up from 29 in 2020, and a 28% increase. And then 33 opiate-related overdoses compared to 26 in 2020. So those overdose deaths that we had here were primarily opiate-related overdose. So one of the big things that we're doing on that is we're continuing to make sure that we have Narcan available for all of our deputies. I think last year we had 18 saves. The sheriff's office alone, the paramedics have it, the fire department has it, and it's being administered all throughout the county, but sheriff's deputies alone administered it 18 times and saved people who were overdosing from opiates. So that is a tool every one of our deputies have, and we look to increase that availability in the field. So wrapping up, looking ahead, as violent crime is spiking in in neighboring jurisdictions, we really want to focus on continuing proactive policing. We want to focus on identifying those 10% of criminals who we think are responsible for about 90% of the crimes, and working to get them in custody and off of our streets. We have a good partnership with the district attorney's office here, so that a lot of those crimes that you see going on in our neighboring counties, they're not happening here, because here in Ventura County, when you put somebody in jail, we still have a bail system here, and people stay in jail, where in our neighboring counties, they don't always stay in jail. The zero bail ruling is still in effect in our neighbor to the south, and so when people get in, unless it's for a very serious crime, they get right back out the door. So we have a great relationship with the district attorney's office, and we want to continue with that. We're continuing to constantly look at crime trends, and if we see crime trends pop up, we want to come up with strategies very quickly. We do that by talking to our neighboring cities, both within the sheriff's office and like Oxnard, Ventura, to see if they've experienced the same thing. And if they've done something that works, we'll replicate it here. And if they haven't, we'll work together to see if we can come up with a new idea to combat the trends. Our strategies to reduce crimes is going to be to pair technology and intelligence-led policing. Again, that intelligence-led policing is working to identify the 10% of the crooks who commit 90% of the crime and target them relentlessly for custody. We'll do crime prevention and education. We had a shortage of staff in our crime prevention community resource unit last year, and we are now refilling those positions and seeing a lot of new energy, a lot of new public outreach, and a lot of crime prevention education going on. And so we're going to continue that through 2022. One of the things we're looking at is overtime saturation patrols. I mentioned earlier, when the crime analysis unit analyzes the crime data and they see a specific area where crimes are occurring or a specific time, we're going to be putting deputies out there in cars to saturate that area to prevent that crime from occurring by detecting it early and having them out in the field. And then we'll utilize and shift existing resources to cover those same days and times where crime's occurring to see if we can stop it before it happens. And to end the presentation and open up the floor to any questions, we've enjoyed a almost 6-decade-long relationship providing police services with Camarillo. And we appreciate the fact that you all take public safety so seriously and provide us with the resources. You always have provided us with the resources that we need to keep Camarillo safe. And I think that partnership has been great, and we look forward to keeping that up as we move into the future. And for anybody who has any desire to look at more information, we did a presentation for you all a year ago showing you the crime transparency dashboards. You can go to venturasheriff.org/transparency, and it will get you to all of our public-facing transparency dashboards where you can look at crime statistic, traffic data, use of force data, officer-involved shootings, all of our stop data from our Racial Identity Profiling Act, just a ton of data available there, and we encourage citizens and council to go and dig through that data if you're so interested. And with that, I'd love to answer questions you all might have.
Questions?
I have a comment when that gets ready.
I just have one question, and I'm sure we all have comments. When it comes to recruitment, obviously there's a shortage of, everyone's experiencing shortages and difficulty in hiring. To what extent is the Ventura County Sheriff experiencing recruitment difficulties, and what are you guys doing to address it? I presume you are.
Yes, yeah, we are. It's all over the country. It's not just the sheriff's office. It's every one of our partnering agencies in this county, in the state. They're experiencing it. I just read an article yesterday. Chicago PD is considering lowering their standards because they can't find enough people to meet their standards to become police officers. So yeah, we're experiencing the same thing. A big part of that is because we had to cancel an academy class during COVID. And canceling that class meant we still have people leaving out the back door to retirements, but we had nobody to come in and fill behind them. And that was a big problem. And to be honest, the civil unrest during 2020 soured a lot of people about wanting to get into this profession. And so we're struggling with recruiting people who really want to be cops as well. So what we're doing is, COVID had a big part of that too. We weren't going out to college campuses to do recruiting efforts because they just weren't holding the events that we normally saw. Now that we're, on the good side of COVID, we're going to be starting those recruitment drives, going out to campuses and other places to try and recruit people. Just recently, the county approved 2 incentives. One is a $10,000 incentive for anybody hiring on to the Sheriff's Department. You don't get it all at once or when you sign. We do about 3 to 4 years in our jail right now, so we got to keep you and get you out to patrol where you get to do the stuff that you really hired on for. So we offer the signing bonus in stages to keep people here. We also, the county approved a bonus for people who lateral over from other agencies. It's a good way for us to do business because we don't have to pay the cost to put them through a 24-week academy. They come academy trained, they come certified, and so they approved a $15,000 bonus for people coming in as laterals as well. And we have seen some benefits from that. I think in 2021 we hired 8 laterals, and we've got several more in the pipeline to be hired now. We're also working on expanding our academy class sizes so that we have more recruits going in, which will hopefully lead to graduating more so we can start filling in some of those vacancies that we have in patrol and throughout the department, actually.
Thank you. Comments? We'll start with you, Kevin.
Yeah, Eric, I want to thank you for your comments and not only identifying what we're doing well, but also somewhat more importantly is where we probably could improve, and also having a program, to help that. I know in my years that I've been up in the council, I want you to please, thank your deputies and thank all your personnel for what they do for our city. And rarely in all my years up here have I heard a complaint of the Sheriff's Department. Extremely rare. Matter of fact, I can't remember hardly any. And that's a credit to your predecessors and you as an individual here. We're all in this together. And anything we can do to help you do your job more effectively, I don't speak for the rest of the council, but I think the trend is there. I think you can read into what, we've said in the future, that we're here to support you. So again, if you could thank your personnel, your deputies, and all the people that keep our city so safe. I'm very, very happy with your level of service, and
keep up the good work, and we'll continue to improve as well, like we always have every year.
Appreciate that. And if I can add to, Kevin just kind of triggered it in my mind, our deputies here are incredibly dedicated. And the only reason that Camarillo is, one of the main reasons that Camarillo is so safe is because we have deputies who care. They want to serve their communities, and they come here and they do it with passion, and they do it with fervor, and the results are because of them. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't give them credit for what goes on in our city and for how safe it is. So thanks for reminding me of that.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yeah, a couple of comments. First of all, Eric, thanks very much for your presentation. I really want to put in a plug for the Community Resource Unit. I was lucky enough to be at Leisure Village for a monthly outreach meeting yesterday, and Sergeant Tommy Miller and Senior Deputy Victor Holmes gave a presentation, both for the folks who were there and on Leisure Village TV, that focused on scams and fraud crime, especially those affecting seniors, and they were superlative. So if there are any opportunities that we can see where the Community Resource Unit can get out and educate the public, not just on relative to crime statistics, but also fraud, scams, and there's a bunch of different topics that they can talk about, I'd sure encourage us to provide those ideas to Commander Tennyson. And again, thanks for a great presentation.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Green?
Well, I just want to thank you. It was a very informative presentation. I always look forward to this, and it's very informative for people who are listening in television land, too, so thanks.
Ms. Santangelo?
Thank you, as always. It's always a really well-done report. Just a couple notes I made about some things. I think what I'm most impressed is how, you called it proactive, and I see it proactive but responsive, and really responsive to the specific things that are ailing our town. You know, what you talked about out at the outlets and the catalytic converter. I saw somebody posted that another one was stolen just a few days ago. So I know it's something we have to continually work against. For those of you that don't know, I have a new job, and I am a booking nurse at the jail. And I'm seeing, one of the great things is I get to work with the deputies. And so I used to work with a lot of deputies when I was in the emergency room. And so now I get to see their side of it. I get to hear their struggles and some of their challenges, and it's just been really educational. The things that you're talking about with the opiate withdrawals, one of the things that struck me, when we used to assess people for drug use and potential overdose and withdrawals and things like that, you would hear the opiate of choice was heroin. It's not anymore. People come in and say, I am addicted to fentanyl. I'm going to withdraw. I use fentanyl every day. I use 2 to 4 grams of fentanyl a day. And that is shocking as a nurse, because the amount of opiate that is, it shows you how addicted people are. So it's scary, and it's just amazing to me how much fentanyl is out there. I also think one of the things that is so amazing to me is the collaboration with other jurisdictions, and I don't remember exactly when it was, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'm watching TV and watching the pursuit into Van Nuys, and then I hear Ventura County Sheriff is there, and I'm like, what? It's Van Nuys, but you continued that pursuit, and 2 people were apprehended, but then you guys had to do collaboration and more, whatever you call it, investigation.
And that was from a residential burglary that started here in Camarillo.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting the other 2 people who got away that night about a week and a half later. So,
Yeah.
Good work with that.
Chileans.
Yes.
So it was also my first, I'm booking these people, and they're from Chile. I'm like, what is going on here? So it's really, really interesting to see it firsthand. The deputies here are really special, and there's one kid, because they're all kids to me, who's excited that he gets to go, hopefully, to Camarillo. And he was talking about how much it was important to work with the great group of deputies that are here. He spoke very highly of you and Shane. And he talked about the fact that he lived here and he wanted to work here. And that's community policing to me, and it's just really refreshing to hear that. So I'm enjoying my work. It's eye-opening. I mostly really appreciate your leadership, and so thank you. And please share that with all the deputies.
I will, thank you.
And I will simply add, I appreciate your work. I appreciate all what the deputies are doing. I speak firsthand experience, but as more of a victim of one of those commercial burglaries. And you guys did phenomenal in identifying, apprehending the suspect. In our case, getting our tools for our family company back. And it was greatly appreciated. Everyone was very professional and very communicative to us. And everything went right, in that situation. And you guys did a phenomenal job. I want to applaud the high standards that you guys have in going to some of the conferences we have, and they have these seminars about public safety and the latest in public safety, and for all elected officials to bring back to their respective community. And Mr. Tremblay can talk about this too. Yeah, you're shaking your head, yes. Everything they're suggesting that these other communities take on and do and pursue to address crime in their communities and raise the standards of their law enforcement, we're already doing. You guys are already doing. I mean, you guys, the VCSO is in many ways the gold bar standard. I can't think of one suggestion that was made in some of those seminars or conferences that you guys were not already pursuing or hadn't already established years ago. And that really speaks to how innovative, how you guys just, you keep with the trends. You look at the data in this case, and you work to find innovative solutions to address things. You're not waiting for someone to necessarily tell you how to address it. You guys are finding the solutions and moving ahead on it. And a little bit to what Ms. Santangelo said, people think that the cops just answer the call. In this case, you guys are preempting the call. Preventative, proactive policing, trying to identify the subjects or the situations that might ultimately lead to a crime occurring, and being on high alert, and not just informing those who might be victims of crime what steps they should take to reduce their likelihood. So, for those who think they can come to Camarillo and commit a crime, and because they're out of, they don't, or Ventura County and commit a crime, and think they can, just by leaving the county, somehow they escape, they don't. And you kind of illustrated in one of your stories there, you can come to Ventura County and commit a crime, and when you do that, you don't escape the hand of the law just because you live in an adjacent county or even further away. We'll follow you. You guys will pursue them and make sure they come to justice and they pay for the crime they committed. And that should be a wake-up call, and that should be a warning to everyone who wants to do crime, commit a crime in our community. So we don't forget, and we will pursue you. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, it is 6:28. We have several other discussion items, P through S. I want to look to the city manager, and would you like us to recess to a closed session, or any of these items? I want to be considerate of any staff. Are any of these items you would like to take now as opposed to postpone to after 7 o'clock?
I think we might be just postpone all the items. and
Okay,
get
so
it-
we'll carry each of these items, P through S, over to the 7 o'clock? Okay. Is that fine with my colleagues? Okay. At this time, we're going to take a short break. We'll just say something arbitrary, 7 minutes, and then we'll recess back into closed session. And we'll be back at 7. We're going to reconvene the meeting of the Camarillo City Council. Let the record reflect that all council members are present. I apologize for being a little late and starting our 7 o'clock session. We're going to flow right into public comments. Is this for public comment? Okay. All right, public comments. I have one comment card, Mr. Jeff Walker. Jeff, you've been here before, so you know the rules, so I won't take the time to explain them.
Thank you, Mayor Mulchay. It was good to see you at the Dizdar Park project update last night. This park is, I don't know, I've become emotionally attached to this thing, and I've spent a lot of time across the street and inside the building that the chamber used to occupy there. And then just pondering this park and all the history there. There's plaques there that, honor the city's commitment to the chamber. And, we've lost our chamber, and that's, I can talk another 3 minutes on how I mourn that. But there's a lot of history there. The bricks that people bought to finance the conversion of that library into a chamber building, I think it was a couple $100,000, and you just look at the names of the bricks on there. And I know we're keeping that, and we're keeping the pillars. And you look at the pillars, I haven't seen those in a while. I just feel, honored to have met some of those pillars. Bob Kildee is one of those pillars, rightfully so. Stan Daly, who, I just adored, is a pillar. And Councilmember Craven, when you accepted Stan Daly's Lifetime Achievement Award, you mentioned that you kind of felt his presence. And he's our mayor emeritus, so he's our mayor forever. And I feel that too. And I kind of felt that around there. And I don't know what the process is going to be for pillars. I mean, the city controls that now. But, it was the chamber's responsibility, and there was a process for that. But if there hasn't been proposed, I would like to propose Charlotte Craven as a pillar of the community. And she would be the first woman to be a pillar. But I think it's well-deserved, and I think she's a pillar of this council. But there's going to be a lot of decisions to be made on that park, and I hope they're careful, and I hope they consider the history. But thank you for the opportunity. It was good to see you last night at that meeting. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you, Jeff. Do I have any other public comments? I have no other public comment cards. Anyone want to rush up? And I see no one else coming forward. So we're going to move on to our public hearing, item T. And do we have a staff presentation or report? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The City Council held 5 public hearings as part of the redistricting process as required by the Elections Code to incorporate the 2020 census data population. This included the redrawing of the district map, and at the March 9th meeting, at that public hearing, City Council selected Public Map 118 as the adopted map to be included in the ordinance. And the City Council called for the first reading of Ordinance 1190. The division of Euclid Avenue and a possible adjustment was discussed during council deliberation that evening. But that evening, the City Council could not vote on a map that had not been publicly posted. So although there was some discussion on that, it could not have been adopted with an adjustment. Additionally, following the meeting, staff was informed by the author of Map 118 that the submitted map actually did include the entirety of Euclid Avenue in one district, being District 2. Staff and the consultant made that confirmation, and the consultant provided the demographic information for Map 118 adjusted. This is included in your packet for your reference. We also looked at the timeline, and the timeline allows for your consideration of the adjusted map. So tonight, after opening and closing the public hearing and receiving testimony, the City Council has 2 options. Stay your course with Map 118 and call for the second reading, or consider Map 118 adjusted, and if selected by the City Council, adopt the map and request a first reading of Ordinance 1191. Now, Mr. Ken Chalkins is here to answer any technical questions, but I wanted to go over just a few slides with you that are included in your packet. The visibility of the screen isn't great, but the maps are included in your packet. So here we're looking at Euclid Avenue. And as you can tell in the adopted map from March 9th, Euclid Avenue is split within two districts. And you see it there, District 1 being in red and District 2 being being in blue. This is the adjusted map. So the adjusted map shows the entirety of Euclid Avenue as was intended by the author to be in District 2. I provided a side-by-side comparison, but you're not really able to see the map. But what I wanted to focus is on the population and the deviation. So on the left-hand side, you have your adopted map 118. You show a population deviation in total of 5.91%. So the adjusted map 118 actually improves the population deviation at 4.51. The other statistics remain relatively constant. So this information is included in your packet for your review, and I am happy to answer any questions. Mr. Chalkins is happy to answer any technical questions.
Do we have any questions? Kevin?
Yeah, a message maybe perhaps for Carmen, and I believe I've already had a discussion on this, or perhaps the gentleman. With this proposed map, would all of Euclid Street be in one district? Because I know it's kind of a interesting street here, and so that's my question is, does it all morph into potentially this new district?
Good evening.
See
I don't know about all, I don't know where Euclid goes, but I know all of that section, that little L section, that dogleg, was all moved.
It all
back into District 2.
It all flows into the same street, if you will, then.
And it's District 2, it moved down.
Yeah.
Which gave District 2 a little bit more population, which made your deviation get closer to zero.
Do you know about how much more population that would add?
You can, right there. So District 2 went from 13,742 to 13,841. So 100 people?
100 people.
110 people?
Okay, and that's probably on both sides of the streets, then, would you say, on both sides?
Yeah.
That, about 100? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions and/or comments? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Stand by. I will make a motion to adopt map 118 adjusted as the final adopted map. And I don't do that.
I'll second that.
Before we vote, could I make a
Comment?
quick
Yeah,
comment? Would
sure.
be appropriate just to make a comment?
Absolutely.
I just want all the members of the public to know that the maps that were submitted, there's many of them that could have been adopted. All of the individuals that submitted these maps worked really hard on them, and I think that's important. And I think it's also important to know that what the criteria that the council had to deal with, the states and the federal regulations, and also, for lack of a better term, the areas of interest, and that means Lewis Road, that means Leisure Village, that means Village at the Park, Old Town, and various other things. So with that criteria, that the changes were going to be, for the most part, in District 1, 2, and 3. And that's what I can only speak for myself, but that's what we worked really hard to do, to try to make these districts as quantifiable and as viable for the next 10 years. And some of us had some pretty significant changes, and some of them had some changes, but may or may not be significant, depending upon how you look at that. But I do think that the map that and I had no idea who submitted the maps. The only time that I knew who submitted the map when they publicly stated that they were the author. That's all I knew. So we selected this one, and I just want to verbally say that there were several maps that were really, really viable maps here, and we selected, at the last meeting, we selected this one. And, you know, I don't want to get into a big discussion on it, but I just want to make sure that the public knows that I'm real proud and happy of anybody that took the time to submit this map, because it's not easy. It probably took them a long time to do it. So I wanted to make those statements before I voted.
Thank you. I have a quick comment of my own, and I just want to say that I thank you to staff. Some sort of clerical, administrative error was made. It was brought to our attention. It was addressed and fixed, so that way the map that we passed was representative of the map that was submitted by the author. So I think we're doing the right thing. I appreciate that, particularly because I know I railed against that one little dog leg on Euclid Avenue, and thank you for making me feel better about it now. So we have a motion and a second. This time, can you please vote? And that passes unanimously. I have a quick question of our city attorney. This was presented as one motion, but can we break it into the three, the reading of the title and then waive the reading?
Yes, so the appropriate action at this time would be to ask me to read the title.
I will ask you to read the title, please.
Thought you might. This is ordinance number 1191, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Camarillo, California, amending sections 2.08.060 through 2.08080 to Chapter 2.08 of Title II, City Council of the Camarillo Municipal Code, redistricting the city's electoral districts. And then I did want to add that that ordinance, which is attachment 4 to your packet, does recite in recital L the reference to the map that you just voted on map 118 adjusted. And the other thing I want to say is that there was an ordinance that was introduced on at your previous meeting in March, on March 9th. However, since there's not apparently going to be a second reading on that ordinance is not being adopted. So the one you're adopting is the one that is before you tonight as attachment 4 to the packet.
I'll move to waive further reading of the ordinance and introduce.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. That concludes that item. Oh, yep, get your gavel ready. And we're going to reconvene the items we pushed over from our 5 o'clock session, item P through S. And so we'll take up item P.
I will reopen the Camarillo Sanitary District Board meeting.
And if we can, staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The California Public Employee Retirement System, who we know as PERS, their regulations under California Government Code require a very specific process if the city is considering the rehire of PERS retirees. In limited circumstances, public agencies are allowed to temporarily retain experienced and technically skilled PERS retired personnel. And similar to other public agencies and private employers, we talked about this tonight, throughout California, due to the increased retirements during the pandemic, it has been very challenging for the city to recruit. So we've had some of our own recruitment challenges. So this is leading to key positions being unfilled for a period of time and creating some backlog work that the current staff is unable to catch up on, while they're also completing their required duties and working on their projects. So to fill this temporary need and in compliance with PERS regulations, the City Council and the Camarillo Sanitary District Board are requested to consider an amendment to the classification and compensation schedule to add the position class of retired annuitant. And we are also requesting your adoption of the required resolutions to temporarily fill 3 critical staffing needs under the stated recommendation.
Microphone off. Are there any questions? Kevin?
Yes, are we out for recruitment for these positions?
Yes, Councilmember Kildee, we are under recruitment for the positions that are vacant.
Any other questions or comments? Can we take all these suggested actions all as one motion, or do we need to take them individually?
Well, let me take a look at this.
It's just one resolution, isn't it?
Yeah, I think but it says resolutions
different
plural, so that's what I'm
resolutions?
reading.
We have 4.
4.
I think you could do them all together.
Okay. So this time we'll.
I'll move to adopt the 4 resolutions as presented in the packet.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously.
Now, do we need another resolution for CAMSAN?
You'll need another motion, yes.
I mean, that's what I meant.
I'll move the suggested 4 actions.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote. I can't quite see Kevin's, but I'm assuming it's unanimous to approval. Okay.
All right, with that, we'll move on to item Q, Water and Wastewater Financial Plan updates.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we are asking City Council and Camarillo Sanitary District Board to receive this presentation of the proposed water and sewer service rate adjustments for the fiscal year 2022 to 23, and consider authorization to begin the Proposition 218 public noticing process as required by California state law. Council and CSD Board will not be taking any action on rates tonight. The time and place for that will be during the public hearing scheduled for May 11th. So I want to start by doing a brief introduction to the city's water and sewer systems. So when we turn on the faucet or flush the toilet, we rarely think of the complex processes and infrastructure that keeps these critical services running. Water is sent to homes and businesses through a series of underground pipelines. When the water reaches our homes, it is used for cooking and cleaning and then sent down the drain to the city's sewer collection system. From here, the wastewater travels to the water reclamation facility. The facility treats several million gallons of wastewater a day. Finally, the treated water is reused for irrigation or released into the Conejo Creek. Funds generated by utility rates provide high-quality drinking water and sanitary services for Camarillo's 45,000 customers. Our water and sewer bills support critical infrastructure, including the city's 194 miles of water pipelines, 144 miles of sewer mains, 4 pump stations, 4 groundwater wells, 6 reservoirs, and over 2,500 manholes. Utility rates pay for ongoing operations, maintenance, repairs, debt payments, emergency reserves, and forward-looking capital improvement projects. The city must continually invest in our water and sewer systems to maintain safe and reliable services. Public Works has identified 31 critical water and sewer projects for the years 2022 through 2026. These include improvements to city sewer lines, chemical systems, flood protection, emergency generators, the reclamation plant, and more. As discussed during the February 23rd City Council meeting, currently the CSD is evaluating the condition of the water reclamation plant and conveyance system through a wastewater master plan. Recent findings indicate that substantial upgrades are needed for the plant to operate effectively, meet future demands, protect the environment, comply with regulations, and withstand climate uncertainty. The costs associated with this project and others identified in the wastewater master plan will impact the current and future rate studies. On establishing rates, typically rates are evaluated and adjusted every 1 to 2 years to account for infrastructure needs, inflation, water supply shortages, water quality challenges, regulatory mandates, and more. Rates are developed through a detailed data-driven process. First, through a master plan study, the city evaluates its facilities, infrastructure, and assets to identify short-term and long-term needs, risks, and priorities. Recommendations from the master plan are then incorporated into the city's 5-year capital improvement program, or CIP, which is reviewed and updated annually. Next, a financial plan detailing CIP financing options and the utility's long-term revenue and expense projections is developed. Then a cost of service analysis determines how the cost will be distributed and recovered among different customer classes. And finally, proposed rates are designed to fund necessary projects and keep vital water and sewer systems running. So over the last 6 months, the Utilities Committee, in partnership with city staff and the city's third-party rate consultant, has worked diligently through the details of the water and sewer financial plans, the cost of service study, and rate structure changes. Tonight, we ask that the City Council and CSD Board receive and review proposed rate adjustments for 1 year beginning July 1st to be considered at the public hearing on May 11th. So again, we are not asking that Council or CSD Board approve or deny rate adjustments tonight, but rather to authorize staff to commence the Proposition 218 public noticing process. And if authorized, every City of Camarillo water and CSD sewer customer will receive a mailed notice detailing the proposed rate changes. So after several months of analysis and careful consideration, it has been determined that modest rate adjustments are needed to replace and repair aging infrastructure, pump and purchase scarce water resources, maintain and upgrade critical treatment facilities, and account for rising costs of materials and energy. Collectively, our financial consultant, city staff, and the Utilities Committee recommend a 2% revenue increase for water service and a 4% revenue increase for sewer service for fiscal year 22-23, while costs for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades are further refined. Today's presentation will highlight important changes and impacts from the 2022-23 proposed rate adjustments, and additional details can be found in the rate study reports. Staff is recommending an adjustment to the water rate structure. Currently, customers are billed using a tiered rate structure where the more water used, the higher the cost per unit of water. Currently, single-family residential customers are billed based on a 4-tier rate structure. Staff is recommending moving from a 4-tier to a 3-tier rate structure to better align with current water usage patterns. Customers today are using far less water than reflective in the last cost of service analysis done in 2013. As a result, few households are reaching the current Tier 4 of over 25 units of water, making the Tier 4 category an ineffective tool to recover revenue or incentivize water conservation. Now we'll look at how the proposed 2% revenue increase for water and 4% revenue increase for sewer service and the rate structure changes impact the average customer's bill. A single-family residential customer using 1,200 cubic feet of water or 12 units of water per month will see an increase of $4.57 on their combined water and sewer bill. This graph shows Camarillo's average water and sewer bill compared to our neighboring communities. It's important to note that even with this year's proposed rate increases, Camarillo's combined utility bill will remain affordable compared to neighboring agencies. In addition to residential customers, our commercial, industrial, and government customer classes may also see changes to their bill depending on the amount of water they use. The examples provided are just that, examples based on average water usage patterns. For both residential and commercial customers, bill impacts will vary based on customer type, meter size, and water usage. A bill calculator will be available on the city's website where customers can calculate the anticipated impacts to their bill. The results will demonstrate the exact impact to an individual family or business based on that customer's specific water use patterns. And customers are encouraged to visit the city's website at cityofcamarillo.org/utility rates for more information. Now let's consider the consequences if we don't adjust rates. Deferred investment and maintenance puts the city's water and sewer systems at risk of failure, ultimately resulting in costly emergency repairs down the line. Preliminary data from the wastewater master plan indicate that substantial upgrades are needed for the plant to operate effectively, meet future demands, protect the environment, comply with regulations, and withstand climate uncertainty. Making modest revenue adjustments of 2% and 4% allows for gradual rate adjustments as opposed to sudden hikes in the future. In this sense, proactive investment keeps water and wastewater services affordable and reliable now and into the future. For the next steps for the rate setting process. As a reminder, tonight we're not asking Council or CSD to approve rates, but rather to authorize staff to initiate the Proposition 218 public noticing process. Following City Council's authorization, all water and sewer customers will receive a public notice in the mail. The notice will detail proposed changes and why investment is needed. Customers have 45 days to petition rate adjustments through a written process that is explained in the notice. During this review period, the city will be hosting a community town hall on April 6th at the city's library to address customer questions and concerns. At the end of the 45-day review period, City Council will hold a public hearing to approve or deny rate adjustments. Should the proposed rates be approved, they would go into effect July 1st, 2022. Staff remains committed to leading a transparent rate-setting process. To date, customers have received information about the ongoing rate study via utility bill inserts, city news, and the city's winter newsletter. Customers will receive information in the Proposition 218 public notice and at the community town hall meeting on April 6th. Additional information, including answers to frequently asked questions, the full rate study report, and financial plans are available on the city's website. So with that, Finance and Public Works staff and the city's rate consultants are available for questions.
Thank you very much, Mark. Questions? Kevin?
Yeah, Mark, is there a hardship opportunity for any ratepayer with this?
There is an option, and I believe that you can find the information on the city's website. I don't know off the top of my head how that works. But there is some provisions and some criteria for meeting that.
And if I could follow up maybe the process, could you go into a little bit in depth about the process and how diligently you worked on trying to land on this 2% and 4%, and how you staff interfaced with the consultant within the realm of all the issues that you had to deal with here?
Right. So typically, staff works with a consultant who specializes in water and sewer rate setting. They prepare a model that considers all of the costs for operating the systems, whether that's the operating and maintenance cost, capital costs for improvements or infrastructure, maintenance, debt service payments that may be required, and also any type of reserves that are set by policy. All of those factors indicate how much of a cost to run the system. Then that is used to determine what rates are needed to produce enough revenue to cover those costs.
And there were several months of negotiations and/or data that was collected, and consulting with staff and various other
Yes.
issues that we came to this point of where we are tonight.
Correct. The staff and the consultant worked for several months prior to presenting preliminary results to the Utilities Committee. And we had a series of meetings with the Utilities Committee to discuss the preliminary results, weigh different options in an effort to minimize impacts to the customers.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Santangelo?
Thank you. Can you, just kind of following that question in terms of figuring out what the rates should be, do we factor in how the city can profit off of providing water and sewer rates?
No, I would
Service?
say a profit margin is not a component of the analysis. It is strictly looking at the costs and projecting costs over the near term, the future. And that factors in increases in the costs of service, the operational costs, and any future capital improvements that are set forth in the city's 5-year capital improvement plan.
So we really mean cost to provide the service.
Correct.
I say that because I see a lot of comments, and I hear a lot of comments that, oh, the city just, they're going to raise rates because they want to make money. And that's just not, yes, we do need to raise funds for those capital projects and to pay for the services that we're providing, but we're not doing this so that we can make money off of providing this service. Also, since we just finished the desalter and spoke to the community about how much that was going to save, can you just talk about what, if we didn't have the salter, what these rates might be looking like?
I don't have a factor of what the rates would look like, but it would be significantly higher if we did not have the desalter operating and planned and factored into the analysis. And part of that is because the groundwater source, that is the lowest cost source of water, has increased significantly and since the last time we did a cost of service analysis.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mark, I have maybe two of you. One on maybe a takeoff from Ms. Santangelo. If we didn't have the desalter, we would be more reliant on imported state water. And I think the conventional wisdom is that the price of imported state water is going to rise rather quickly, considering the fact that we continue to be in a drought and there's not as much of it to go around.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think I would add to it that we are now, with the desalter, introducing a third source of water. The groundwater being the lowest cost option, as I mentioned, costs have gone up significantly and will continue to go up. And the other side, the highest cost option, is the imported water. Both of those options we have no control over. The desalter water now gives us a component that we do have some level of control over.
And speaking of the three sources of water, and that ties into the water rate structure as well, from going to what I'll call the 4 columns down, or maybe the 4 glasses to 3 glasses in terms of rates. That is to essentially incentivize people to reduce water consumption. And to that extent, to the extent in which you do, you'd effectively be paying, to an extent, a cheaper rate per water used, because we're effectively kind of divvying up what type of water you're taking. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I think in that sense, you could look at the tier 1 to 9 units of usage being the groundwater and the desalter water, so the lowest and the medium cost level. And as you get up into tier 2 and 3, then you start introducing the much more costly imported water into the mix. And I think that the tier structure is also based on promoting further conservation. And I know over the past couple of years, everybody has conserved and reduced their water usage, but there are still regulatory requirements that are requiring us to conserve even more.
All right. Thank you. That was all the questions I had. Any other comments or questions? So at this point, what is the will of the council?
Remember the public who was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Is there a member of the public? Do I have any public comments? I'm seeing, I have no comment cards, and I'm seeing no one rush up. At this point, I'm looking at what the will of the council is.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to move staff's recommendation in a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously.
I'll ask the same for Camarillo Sanitary District.
Second.
You had a first?
You're making the motion, right? Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second it.
Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Okay, and with that, I will close the Camarillo Sanitary District meeting.
All right, and we will move on to item R on the council agenda, fiscal year 2022-2023 community service grant requests.
Thank you. The Community Service Grants Program is aimed at providing support to local community programs and activities directly benefiting Camarillo residents. The annual process includes a workshop overview of the program and the application process in December, and then a review of applications and city council consideration in March for funding in the next fiscal year. So whatever funding was approved tonight would be for the next fiscal year starting July 1. The funding source is the city's general fund through a calculation set forth by policy. 9 applications for the program were received by the deadline. The applications were reviewed with the Finance Committee over the course of 2 meetings, and the committee recommends 8 organizations for funding at a total of $45,554 as indicated in the agenda attachment. So with that, I will be available for any questions, and the committee is available.
All right, do we have any questions?
Any questions?
I see no question. I have one question. I didn't see Rio Mesa on here. Usually they do apply. In this case, did they?
They're there.
I see Adolfo Camarillo and I see Rancho Campana.
Rio Mesa was supposed to be there.
They did not apply.
Did we reach out to them?
We did.
Okay.
The normal process is we reach out to past recipients to let them know when the deadline is, when the the workshop is. But
Did they communicate back to us, no interest, or, usually this is the PTA, I think, right? I think it's usually,
Yes.
it's a safe driving, the prom, safe.
Similar program.
Yeah, they have a
sober.
PT something, not a PTA.
Oh, but like an equivalent of PTO? Yeah. PTO means something different to me, paid time off.
Organization instead of association. For them.
Okay, that was my only question. Yeah. Susan?
It's a very minor, well, not, under the chart that we have, under the estimated number benefiting, is that what the applicants tell us?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up with a comment. I don't know if they're really, okay. For number 1, ACHS Music Boosters, the number of people benefiting direct Camarillo, 70 to 90. And I'm thinking there's probably 70 to 90 people in the band, and so they're going to directly benefit. And then I go down to number 3 for Channel Islands Choral Association, and it says 1,500 people are going to benefit.
I thought we had that corrected. We got new information in the committee meeting.
Right.
We didn't change the chart.
That's right. That's right. I think that number was much lower because we reached out based on that type of comparison. We tried to make it as close to apples, because yes, that 1,500 likely includes folks that are attending the performances versus the children or the folks that are actually working in the program.
Right.
Playing the music. And yes, apologies for that oversight, but yes, we did clarify that. And at the Finance Committee level, that same question was asked. So we did go back and bring forth a revised number that was less than that.
Good, I'm glad I asked them, thank you.
Mrs. Craven?
And I, just for information, since it's on here, I want to address the one that the Finance Committee thought we would not fund. It was only a benefit to 5 Camarillo residents, and all of their programs were fundraisers. We have never had a practice of funding charitable organizations' fundraisers. We feel that they should be, whatever they take in from their fundraisers should cover the costs. But anyway, that was our reasoning on that.
No, that's right.
All right, any other comments or questions? At this point, I will
Move to approve this CSG request in the amount of $45,554.
Second that motion.
I already had a second from Mr. Tremblay, so I'll take that. I want to make one quick comment. If someone from Rio Mesa is listening, or if we can get if they do come up, it'd be very nice if they did reach out, if they do still need help funding that program. I think it's vital.
Let me just say, we did reject other applications because they did not meet the deadline, and these
Yep.
people were notified of the deadline, so.
No, sorry.
If
I'm
you're
just
saying, reach out and we're going to give you money, I think we have to take a good hard look at that.
I'm not suggesting that we give them money, but I will simply help where I can amplify their need for that money. Understanding that they didn't meet our deadlines and our criteria that we set forth, and we did make the effort of reaching out to them. But nonetheless, the need is there, and I think it's a really important need. So where I can or we can help them, make sure they're able to, suitably put on that the safe driving program. I think it's really important, so.
And their band program, actually. My son was involved in their band program, and when I was a part of it, we were in desperate need of money for instruments. So I hope somebody's listening from Rio Mesa. They
For
have
next
kids
year.
that go to school here. It's one of our schools, and so we'd like to support them.
All right, with that, I had a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. And that takes us to item S, fiscal year 2022-2023 Community Development Block Grant allocations.
Hello, Mayor Mulchay and council members. My name is Erin Lay, and I work with Veronica Tam and Associates Consulting Firm. We've been working with city staff here developing the Community Development Block Grant 2022-2023 Action Plan. The item I'm here to present for you is the adoption of a resolution approving the preliminary funding recommendations for the 2022-2023 funding year. The City of Camarillo is an entitlement grantee, and as such receives CDBG funding annually from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, commonly called HUD. HUD has not yet released the exact amount of the funds for CDBG for fiscal year 2022-23, but they've directed grantees to use the planning process going forward with estimated amounts based on the current year 2021-2022, which is $343,071. In addition to that estimated amount, there is expected to be $59,076 in prior year unallocated funds and $25,000 in program income. This brings the total to be allocated to just over $427,000. Now, HUD has certain limits on the way these funds can be spent. Up to 20% of the new funds can be allocated for administration, which includes fair housing services. Up to 15% can be allocated for public services, which you can think of as human or social services. The remaining 65% of the new 22-23 allocation must be used on capital projects. Camarillo typically engages the nonprofit community to assist in carrying out CDBG-eligible activities serving Camarillo residents. In December, 2 meetings were held to inform these local agencies about the availability of funding. The deadline to receive the applications was January 24th, and 5 applications were received. 4 of those applications were for items which fell under the public services 15% cap, which is estimated at $51,460. The specific funding allocations are in your agenda report. Habitat for Humanity is also recommended to receive $75,000 for the Habitat Home Repair Program. Because that's a bricks and mortar program, it's not subject to the same 15% public services cap. The city's also recommending certain city programs be funded. The 2022-2023, and these include allocating $217,072 for the Affordable Housing Acquisition Program, allocating $15,000 for the First-Time Homebuyer Down Payment Assistance Program. $61,449 is recommended for administration costs, and $7,161 for fair housing services through the Housing Rights Center. The next steps in this process include a 30-day public review, which will be between March 23rd and April 27th. A public hearing before the City Council forecast for April 27th to finalize the program and activities in the action plan, and the submission of the action plan to HUD by the May 15th deadline. The recommended action before you today is to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary funding allocations for inclusion into the draft 2022-2023 action plan. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from council? Mr. Kildee?
Yeah, thank you for that report. That $343,000, is that a firm number? Is that what we know that we're going to get, or we still sort of?
It's absolutely not. It's an estimate. That's what Camarillo received in 2021-22. HUD has let all of the entitlement jurisdictions in the country know that we would not be getting our allocations in a kind of a normal funding timeline, and they encouraged jurisdictions to use the prior year, or what is the current year, funding as a starting point to do estimated allocations, and then wait until the final allocations are released before submitting.
Do we have any idea, I know it's crystal ball, but are we 3 months, 6 months, a year, who knows, or is it just, they didn't really give any indication about when?
They didn't give any
Okay.
indication that, the city will have 60 days after the release of the allocation in order to submit the final plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I had one follow-up on Kevin's question. So if in the event the allocation exceeds that which we've projected here, you guys will be coming back to council for appropriation of the difference?
Typically, it can be done a number of ways, but typically what's done is that your annual action plan will contain an attachment, which is a contingency plan, which essentially says, if we get more, here's what we're going to do. If we get less, here's how we're going to handle it, so that your approval can be the last approval, and it doesn't have to come back when the final numbers are out.
Understand. Okay, thank you.
No. Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. All right, we've completed all the rest of the items from both 7 o'clock and the ones we carried over from 5 o'clock. We just have oral communications. At this point, we do not have any comment from either our city manager or city attorney. So, let's see, I started on that, and I'm going to start with Mr. Kildee this time.
That's what you did last time.
Is that what I did last time?
Tony was last.
Oh, all right, I'm going to start with Tony. I'm going to start with Tony this time then.
And I'll
I don't wanna pick on
volunteer to
Kevin.
go last.
Okay, Charlotte can go last.
This is blessedly short. Meetings attended since March 9. On March 10, Transportation and Infrastructure Committee with the mayor. Also, I had a statewide California Association of Sanitation Agencies board meeting. And then on March 11, for Metrolink, I had both executive committee and contract operations, maintenance and safety committee meetings. And that's it.
All right, Ms. Santangelo?
Okay, for meetings attended, March 10th was the Airport Authority, March 16th, Economic Development and Land Use, and March 16th is Executive Committee for CPA, and that's all I have.
Mr. Kildee, this is going fast. Mr. Kildee?
That was quick. Okay, attended a VCOG meeting. Whether the council likes it or not, I'm actually the chair of VCOG this year. And if anybody has anything that they'd like for us to discuss, we do have a vetting process on that, an issue. It's near and dear to the county. You can let me know. And it's a good organization. We're going to have a really good year here. I look forward to chairing it. There will be our annual meeting, and I expect everyone to be there.
Give us the date well ahead of time.
Yeah, well, I figured you were going to ask that. Well, it's going to be in October. We have a date, but I'm not sure that it's going to be firm yet because we really want to have it at the ranch house, and we're working on a date in October, and I'll get that to each and every one of you as soon as I can. So hopefully you'll be there. And let's see, that's all I have. No.
All right, let me try to drag this out a little bit then.
Oh, I'll drag it out.
Well, yeah, we'll let Charlotte go last. Meetings attended Thursday, March 10th, Transportation Infrastructure meeting. Thursday, Thursday, March 10th, Airport Authority. Friday, March 11th, I was accompanied by our city manager, assistant city manager, community relations officer, and we got to go out to Sisu Channel Islands and had a meet and greet with President Yao. And we were able, I think it was a good discussion, a fruitful discussion, and we talked about how both the city and the university can work more jointly together to serve both our constituencies and maybe where we can assist one another. So I'm hopeful that some things will come of that discussion. Tuesday, March 15th, I attended EV Advocates of Ventura County. Like I said, meets here in Camarillo once a month. We usually try to rotate around restaurants. So please, if anyone is interested, it's open to all of Ventura County. I encourage people to come out. It's been growing and growing. Wednesday, March 16th, Economic Development and Land Use. Tuesday, March 22nd, that was yesterday, Educator of the Month was Miss Sarah Perry at Santa Rosa Technology Magnet School. And so that was a real treat. And she got to accept the award in front of a whole room full of her colleagues. And so it was really great. What?
Including my daughter.
Including your daughter? Okay. Inside joke. Tuesday, March 22nd, last night, I also attended the Dizdar Park Project Design Review Meeting. I didn't speak at it. It was just an opportunity for me to fully take in the feedback people had. So that was nice. And it's good to see that project, albeit slowly, maybe slower than I would like, still moving, slowly. Too slow. But that's all I got. Mrs. Craig.
Not as slow as a desalter.
Not as slow as a desalter. Let's hope not.
Okay, I attended the Investment Committee yesterday. I attended the Contracts Cities Legislative meeting today, and at the next meeting, I plan to report to you a few bills that if they're still in the pipeline, I think could cause us some problems. And then last Thursday, I attended the AWA WaterWise meeting. And I'm going to read you a little bit about that. This was a public meeting, and I'll tell you how to watch it on YouTube shortly. The title of the meeting was Using the Courts to Monetize Our Water Supply. What is really at stake with basin adjudication? How long does it take? How much does it cost? And does anybody really benefit? It was presented by Mauricio Guardado, the general manager of United, which was here tonight making a presentation. I'm going to just tell you a couple things that caught my interest. He started out by explaining that the current adjudication, or the current lawsuit that's been filed is not just for water supply, but for storage in the basin. And that the state owns all the water, it holds it in trust for the people, and it must be used for beneficial use when use of water is granted. Currently, we're granted one way. There's a lawsuit that would grant it and have your share of water or your amount that you're granted decided another way. Mr. Guardado impressed me greatly with what he said. He's a slow speaker, so I encourage all of you to go to the website and listen to it. You can go to the United website and they'll have something there, but this doesn't read out very well. It's HTTPS and all that stuff. Then YouTube /Y5V0RZ28MQ8. And I'm going to send that to the city clerk so she can send it out to everybody. And if you would like, you can use the link to get to it. It was very, very educational. If you ever want to know what's going to happen in a water adjudication, he really listed the things out. It took about 45 minutes. And the one thing that really caught my ear was when he said, once you're in an adjudication, once it's gone to the judges and they're trying to decide this, nobody gets any grants for any projects. Because they don't know if you're actually going to be able to pump the water. So that was the teaser, and I hope you all will follow the link and go to the website. Anybody can do that, because it was a public meeting. Also, a couple days ago, there was a flyer came through, and I'm assuming everybody got it, on the 2022 Governance Leadership Academy put on by the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority. We are members of that. This is a free academy that's put on by our JPIA. It's a very valuable academy, and I hope somebody would be able to go. I certainly am not. I'm leaving the council. But it's a good introduction to risk management, insurance, and financial things. Additionally, I'm not sure who caught it, but there was an electronic flyer that came through with a whole bunch of stuff from the Ventura County, what used to be our chamber. The name isn't coming to me now, the CBA. And they're having something called the Business and Economic Outlook Luncheon, April 14th at Spanish Hills. And the title of it is, is our airport sized right or something like that? And I thought somebody needed to go to that, so I'm hoping that'll catch somebody's eye. And early in the morning, I'm smelling a lot of skunks again, like 5 o'clock to 6:30. Really bad smells. Ugh. If you don't get up that early, you probably don't smell it, and I don't know where it's coming from, but boy, you can smell it growing. So this time's history lesson is on the Regional Defense Partnership. And I will volunteer to do these comments last every time from here on, Mr. Mayor. And then nobody has to follow me.
Sounds good to me.
So the Regional Defense Partnership is called RDP 21. And in an effort to keep the local Navy bases off of the closure list in the 1992 Base Realignment and Closure, or BRAC, Cal Carrera, president of a group called the Point Mugu Contractors Defense Services Industry Executive Association, teamed up with Carolyn Levins, who was the chairman of ACEDA, to ask County Supervisor John Flynn if the county could help. They were afraid that a closure would have a drastic negative economic impact on the county as a whole. John said they asked him because he had earlier been instrumental in obtaining the land for the National Guard's 146th Airlift Wing to move here from Van Nuys. Cal and Carolyn went around to all the cities and the county asking for donations, and Lynn Hawkes was hired as the Washington, D.C. lobbyist. This was a group with a mission. Our first lobbying trip to Washington, D.C. included both city and business representatives. Supervisor John Flynn, city representatives Manny Lopez from Oxnard, Rosalie Measures from Ventura, Dr. Robert Turner from Port Hueneme, and me, as well as Brian Miller from Elton Gallagher's office, Marty De Los Cobos from the gas company, military contractor Bill Simmons, and Navy civilian retiree Ted Raines. We lobbied in the Pentagon and on Capitol Hill. It took quite a while, but our effort was successful. But we had no time to rest on our laurels. A more strenuous fight lay ahead in the 1995 BRAC. Supervisor Frank Schillo walked into one meeting and took charge of the group, moved Mr. Flynn out. The city managers and the county CEO developed a formula for funding from the cities and the county, with each government agency's amount calculated in proportion to the number of Department of Defense W-2 forms sent to each city's zip codes. At one point, Point Mugu was put on the closure list, mainly because of the influence of the community support group at China Lake or Ridgecrest. We worked harder than ever and prevailed in the end. About that time, Supervisor Schillo and Gene Fisher, who had recently retired from the base, led the loosely connected group into a permanent organization that would tell the Ventura County story continually, so that officials on the East Coast would always recognize the value of our base, and not just during BRAC. They wrote a set of bylaws, set up a board of directors, and continued to ask the city and the cities and the county for operating money. The county acted as the banker. Some cities joined, others didn't, but the funding formula remained the same. Each paying government agency was entitled to have one elected official on the board of directors, which also had a limited number of non-government members, who are mostly retired civilians from the base. There would be two co-chairs, one a public member and the other appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Lynn Hawkes has always remained as the lobbyist. After the scare of the 1995 BRAC, we turned our efforts from fighting BRACs to making Ventura County BRAC-proof by lobbying for more tenant activities to come here. Whenever we hear of an activity that fits in with local activities being cut at another base, we lobby to have that activity brought here. As a result, the number of tenant commands has increased from 60 to more than 85. In order to BRAC the base, they would need to move all those tenant activities other places. In 2002, Supervisor Judy Michaels from Simi Valley became co-chair until she left the board in 2006. Since then, Supervisors Kathy Long, John Zaragoza, and Kelly Long have held the position of co-chair. That same year, in 2002, the Navy merged the Construction Battalion Center, Port Hueneme, and the Naval Air Station, Point Mugu, into one base, Naval Base Ventura County, which also includes a facility at San Nicolas Island and the entire Pacific Test Range, which extends from California coast all the way to Hawaii. Naval Base Ventura County Commander provides facilities for all the tenant commands, each of which has its own commanding officer. The tenant commands are extremely varied, from satellite command to electronic warfare to weapons evaluation and testing to half of the Seabees. The other half is in Gulfport, Mississippi. The Air National Guard 146th Airlift Wing is adjacent, and it shares the Point Mugu airstrip. It has several missions in addition to its military mission, including drug interdiction and firefighting missions. 2006 was another year of change for RDP. We added the unpaid position of treasurer, which I was elected by the board to fill, and we switched our banking services to the city of Camarillo. I filled out the forms, and RDP was established as a 501c4 tax-exempt charitable trust, which allows us to lobby. For your information, I also file the state and federal taxes each year, as well as the state attorney general's filing. We continue to ask cities and the county for financial support using the formula with the W-2 form numbers re-verified. Member cities are Camarillo, Oxnard, Port Hueneme, Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks, and Ventura, and we hope that Moorpark will rejoin soon. So what does RDP do? In addition to trying to attract more tenant activities, we visit the main tenant activities annually to find out what their needs are. The Navy cannot lobby, and it cannot ask us to lobby. We make our own decisions as to what needs will be our thrust for the year. We write white papers to substantiate the needs. Then we fly to Washington, D.C. to visit officials in the Pentagon, various federal departments, and the offices of our own and other appropriate elected officials. With the exception of the last 2 COVID years, we've made those trips annually since 1995 and twice when needed. It's been a lot of tramping the halls of Congress and the Pentagon, but we've had many successes. What are our successes? We're proud of what we've accomplished, some of which includes the establishment of the Unmanned Surface Development Squadron 1 at Point Mugu, construction of the new Coast Guard facility at Point Mugu, the new Directed Energy Lab at Point Mugu, improved perimeter security at Point Mugu, home basing of the MQ-25 Stingray unmanned air system at Point Mugu. It sounds like everything was at Point Mugu, but that's not true. The Triton Unmanned Aircraft Systems Maintenance Detachment, storage and distribution missions for the littoral combat ships, and that's at Port Hueneme, CB maintenance, stock training school, cable replacement between San Nicolas Island and Point Mugu, Airborne Early Warning Wing Pacific, or the E-2s, to Point Mugu, establishment of Point Mugu as an asymmetric warfare center, and the new Surface Warfare Center test ship. Additionally, there were military construction projects, or MILCONs as the Navy calls them. A few of those include improvements for the Navy's port, extension of the aircraft parking apron, San Nicolas Island Pier, CBC Logistics Support Building, Naval Surface Warfare Center's Engineering Lab, a Range Control Building, the Surface Targets Development Lab, and the Missile Assembly and Storage Building on San Nicolas Island. Each brought millions of dollars of construction money as well as new jobs to Ventura County. Not all of our activities are for the Navy or the Air Guard. It took years of lobbying the Coast Guard before it moved its helicopters from LAX to Naval Base Ventura County. We were successful in getting 8 C-130J model planes for the Air Guard, and we've also asked the Department of Interior Division of Forestry for money for the Air Guard's firefighting equipment, as well as a training simulator for the C-130Js. What's our biggest selling point? Take a guess.
The weather.
You can't read my notes.
No, I didn't. Geographic area.
Soar. Our biggest selling point is SOAR. Encroachment is a dirty word to the military, and Save Our Agricultural Resources initiative runs through 2050. While many military bases are being forced out as development encroaches, we literally guarantee them in the Pentagon that the 12 miles of farmland between Camarillo and Point Mugu will remain farms, and they will not be encroached upon. It's music to their ears. The bigger question is, why have Ventura County agencies felt it was so important to fund this constant fight to retain and increase military presence when other places have begged to have their bases closed? On a local level, the Navy has been and continues to be the largest employer in the county, and it has by far the largest payroll. The economy is very dependent upon both the base's military and civilian employees, as well as thousands employed by military contractors who are based here. However, on a national scale, this base is even more important. This is the only base in the nation that has an airstrip, a deep water port, and a railhead. It also includes San Nicolas Island and a test range that is the largest in the world. Not just the United States, but our allies test aircraft, missiles, software, and other things on the test range that stretches, as I said, from off the coast of California all the way to Hawaii. As we change our defense focus from Europe to across the Pacific, Naval Base Ventura County is not just vital to the county's economy, but also to our nation's defense. That's all I have.
That was great. right, with that, we will recess back into closed session, and we do not anticipate any announcements.
That's correct.
All right, at this point, we will recess into closed session.